Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue. You are in the meeting now. There are 15 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Councilman Weaver, this is Pete. One moment.
We got something on our.
I'm sensing we don't have anyone for the citizens presentation. Would that be safe, Pete?
We do have some participants. One moment.
Okay.
I have sound for now, just FYI.
Mayor, I do not see anybody here.
Thank you, Pete. We'll move on to we've got several presentations and some formal action.
And that I will faithfully and impartially.
That I will faithfully
Best of my ability. Hold the duties of the office.
You're duly sworn in as councilman. Congratulations.
Councilor Klein, I know you want to get a picture here with your family, if you could. Mayor Edwards, would you like to stay down here for this as well?
Sure. If they want me to.
Photo bomb? I think we've got the sound figured out here too. Mayor, I'd actually have you come over here.
Sound like.
And I'll tell you if Councilman Cloy is photobombing you or not. Okay, ready. Matt, yeah, duck down. Councilman. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And I believe we've got our sound figured out now too.
Thank you all for that. Next, we move to a very happy time for us. We're going to be swearing in a new member of the police department. And Chief, tell us what you know about Jared.
All right, Your Honor, Council, I'm very pleased tonight to introduce our newest police officer, Jared Annis. He has graduated from the 300th Basic Academy, the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy, the largest class ever to be graduated. He is joined here tonight by his family. It's more important than ever. In the best of times, a police officer needs the support of their family. Today, especially so, Jared is joined by his wife and kids tonight, and also his brother, who is a Clive firefighter. So welcome to the family. Jared, if you'd like to come up here, we're going to have the mayor on his second official duty to administer your oath of office. And secondly, in Clive, we also do the oath of honor. The oath of office is required by law. We also include an oath of honor because we feel like we would like to go a step above what we have to do. So, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Chief. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of the office of police officer
discharge all the duties of the office of police officer
for the city of Plymouth,
for the city of Plymouth,
now as hereafter required by law.
now as hereafter required by law.
Thank you. That takes care of the formal part. Now we'll move to the law enforcement oath of honor. You will repeat after me. On my honor,
On my honor,
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust.
or the public trust.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others
to hold myself and others
accountable for our actions.
accountable for our actions.
I will always uphold the Constitution,
I will always uphold the Constitution,
my community,
my community,
and the agency I serve.
and the agency I serve.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll go take care of some formal signing. Thank you very much. Jared, I'd like to-
Yes. I'm gonna mark Ted as being present at
Yes.
6:11.
Very good. The next item is a presentation to the Des Moines Chin Evangelical Church. And I'll turn this over to Pete to talk about the great community effort and cooperation that they've provided us as we built our public safety center. We could not have done it without their help. So Pete, tell us.
Thank you, Your Honor. So tonight is a thank you that we are very proud to give on behalf of all of the residents and businesses of the city of Clive, because were it not for this wonderful congregation, a very difficult construction project would have been even more difficult. The generosity that the Des Moines Chin Evangelical Church has shown to the city of Clive, to our construction partners, offering up anytime we needed a use of that parking lot so we could stage vehicles, so we get all of our workers on site, so that we could welcome residents to come and visit in this wonderful new facility. They have been nothing but gracious, and tonight we are very pleased to give them a small token of that appreciation.
Thank you, Pete.
Again. Perhaps here the merit. So let's go to the congregation. Merit still. Everybody up here. Okay.
So, on behalf of the city of Clive, I want to thank you for your wonderful work. This piece of art expresses our appreciation for everything that you've done. And we look forward to our continuing relationship. Thank you so much.
I'll just get a picture with everybody together here, and we're gonna need to kind of scooch in a little bit. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Very much. I have a box for you as well.
Busy on your first mayor. This is part of the aerobic exercise program. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Yep. Our next item on the agenda is our annual update from Clive Community Foundation. And we have a couple of representatives from the foundation here. Jane Fogg, we're very pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead and set this up.
And while we're waiting, Bob, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
I'll be up after Jane. a couple of times.
Okay, well, very good.
I'm back. I'll remind you, Mike.
Thanks, Bob.
Are we ready?
Just use the side step.
Okay, thank you.
Minimize that for you if you'd like. That's
Please.
instruction.
Technology, a wonderful thing when it works perfectly. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor. It's wonderful to be here on this special night for your swearing in, and thank you to council members for your time tonight. Just look at your agenda. I see how busy you are. So take time to talk about some philanthropy in your community, and our community is really special. So thank you so much. Inspired philanthropy is what we do and what we're about. We have a purpose, and so why we exist, especially to connect donors in our community who want to invest in Clive in a philanthropic way. And we want to be sure they have that opportunity to do so. We have 3 core priorities that kind of guide us as we do our determination for grants or how we do our work. And they are here. I want to especially highlight community collaboration because that's partnering with organizations and entities within our city on special projects really magnifies what we're able to do together. So we certainly appreciate that. We have 7 funds that we manage, just over $500,000 among the funds. We are an affiliate of the Greater Des Moines Community Foundation. We let them do the professional management of our financial investments. They also do the reporting for us, and they provide us with some staffing support as well. So we are an affiliate of the Greater Des Moines Community Foundation. I'd like to bring your attention to the first fund on the list. It is the Clive Community Betterment Endowment. That was formed by a bequest from former Mayor Gene Maddox, sorry. And so that perpetuity investment in Clive generates revenue every year on an annual basis, as does our Clive Community Endowment. There's 21% of our funds are invested in endowments, and the remaining funds are active for use for special projects. Our impact fund is really our community grant fund. Most of our transactional donors activity takes place through that Impact Fund. And the remaining 4 should look familiar to you. They're all very Clive specific for specific uses. And again, some are funded by revenue that you bring in and also are open at any time for donors to invest in Clive. I brought up this schematic to just give you a picture of what proportionality our grant money has gone out previously. We invest a lot in community betterment, in human services and youth activities. Again, this is about $182,000 worth of grants, but I wanted to kind of give you a picture of where the focus has been previously. This slide gives you just a list of some of the organizations that we have granted funds for. I give a couple of examples. The Can Play or Opportunity on Deck does sports activities in Lannan Park for free with volunteers and a heavy emphasis on participation and good sportsmanship. The On With Life example was when we helped partner to buy bicycle helmets for youth and work with the Clive Police Department to fit those helmets. So that's the kind of thing that we've invested in the past. All of those investments are very specific. Obviously, we don't fund the organization, but what we do is to purchase or advance opportunities for Clive youth, Clive families. And that's how they report on the progress on those grants. Some of the connection and collaboration that we have, the city is really quite direct with the Community Foundation. And I didn't know if you knew that. The mayor can appoint 2 of our board members. And also there are certain funds that are advised only by the mayor, city manager, and the president of the Clive Community Foundation. You see the library fund has its use, and that is overseen by the leisure director of leisure services and the board members as well. You help us by promoting Clive Community Foundation, and I know you saw us on the front page along with the mayor. The opportunity to communicate to our community on a regular basis that we have a community foundation and they have an opportunity to invest philanthropically is really important. So we thank you for that precious space. And it's important that you help us communicate to the broader community. We have committed as an organization to raise about $300,000 towards the Greenbelt Landing project over the course of time of 6 years. But that's something that we do in partnership and in collaboration with the city as well. And then, as you know, recently we helped partner on the K9 campaign. Other projects that come before us, we have an opportunity to invest. If we have a donor who comes to us with a particular idea, we try to say yes, help to make it work, and then collaborate with the organizations that help make it successful. We do have 2 board members with us tonight, Bob Forte, who you met, and also Susan Judkins serves on the board as well. There's no reason to come and not say, and here's what you can do for us. So we love your help to continue to inform the community about the Clive Community Foundation, promote it, support it. Use your networks, your personal connections to say, you should maybe call in so-and-so, or I'd like to tell you about, or let me share with you a link to the Clive Community Foundation so people can learn more. We have so much potential and we can do so much more as we carry out our work together. Bob, I think, has some marketing materials he'd like to share with you. We'd hope to show you a video tonight that has been produced, but we'll post it on the YouTube later, I understand. So, Bob, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city folks, and everybody else here who knows I'm Bob now. Bob Forte, this is my beginning my 3rd year with the Clive Community Foundation, and it's been a pleasure and honor to work with Jane and with Susan. Various members of the foundation have really taught me about what the foundation is all about. I came in here relatively new to this type of organization, and I've learned on the way a lot about the giving, about the unselfishness of many people in this community, especially those who volunteer to serve and those who help us, get our funds and help us help the other organizations in the city. Jane's last slide of how you can help inform the community, promote and support, identify opportunities. Obviously, it falls to us it to a great extent. I'm on the marketing committee. We have 2 other members on the marketing committee. Some of the things that we recognize through a survey and really talking to people who either know a lot about us don't know a lot about us is we're unrecognized. Opportunity unrecognized for the work that we do, or maybe unrecognized because people don't know what we do. So being part of the marketing committee, the task is on us to try and raise awareness in some different ways. And there are a lot of different things that we've done in the past year. I just want to highlight a couple of them. The main thing that we've done is to organize and establish a marketing calendar, which basically has the 3 members of the marketing committee and a quarterly calendar of when we're going to post or what items we're going to post on our website, on our Facebook page, homeowners associations, whatever, and make those posts available and make them interesting enough to our visitors to want to take the next step and to have some kind of a call to action when they learn more about the Clive Community Foundation, some of the funds we support, and how we interact with the community. And the biggest thing that it's doing for us is organizing our thoughts. A big piece of this is also going to be having a monthly article, maybe 2, depending on the month, in the City of Clive newsletter. And I went back over the last 36 months of Clive newsletters. We only had 11 articles, and for our organization, as much as we collaborate with the city, as Jane mentioned, we need to have a presence there. Not just about what we do, but about what the organizations that we support do. And a couple of good examples of Clive Community Services. They're kind of one of our ongoing grantees, and then the Clive Lions Club. We just did a great event with Clive Lions and their holiday basket program. So not what we do, but who we support and what they do in our community. The second thing is we're always looking for free advice, free consulting help, right? So we're partnering with, you're familiar with the APEX program at the Waukee schools. I worked on a health and wellness initiative a couple of years ago, and we're going to work with them in 2 different areas starting February. We're going to meet with them the last week of January. We're going to meet with instructors that work in the areas of social media to let us know what our social media experience is like for the people that explore that option. Many more nowadays than it was a few years ago. And also looking at our website. And there's a specific website development class that they teach there at the APEX at the Waukee Innovation and Learning Center. So with that being said, there are a lot of other opportunities we're trying to take advantage of and to move the ball forward as much as we can. But the collaboration piece, I think, is really important for us to continue. As Jane mentioned, there was a video we had that had Jane Powell from Star 102.5 doing a voiceover of some transitions from the old Greenbelt landing to the new. Richard Brown provided us with some new images. By the way, I guess his back surgery went well. So I texted him back and forth today. He feels a lot better. So hopefully he has a quick recovery. At any rate, we'll put that link up. We're actually using YouTube to host our videos, which we'll get more and more of. I think the videos and pictures bring everything to life and more meaningful for people. So that's pretty much it. So we'll make that link available to you. And again, appreciate your time and your support. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Jane or Bob before they leave?
Congratulations to Bob for his grandson. To your
grandson,
I just saw pictures of his grandson. First grandson.
Our son and daughter-in-law in Colorado. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations. Again, thanks for the great work. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll move on to the consent items.
Approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? Consent items are approved by a vote of 4-0. Now we'll move on to our action items. First action item we have is a public hearing. We have 2 public hearings tonight. And did we publish the appropriate public notice on these hearings, Matthew?
Yes, Your Honor, they were both published in the Des Moines Register on December 29th, 2021.
All right, thank you. So who do we have, Matt?
Amanda, yep.
Yep, I'm joining
She's
you
on
guys
Zoom.
virtually tonight. Can you all hear me?
Amanda, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, she's talking.
Mhm.
I can hear you, Amanda.
Okay.
Yeah, we can really well.
Pete, can you guys hear me in the chambers?
Amanda is talking, but we're not hearing her.
One moment.
Can you hear me now, Pete?
Well, why don't you give us a quick overview, and if we can bring Amanda in, we will.
Yeah, I have her wording here, just in case. So tonight, there's a public hearing for the rezoning for a portion of Warrior Lane annexation included in Shadow Creek plats 6 and 9 from R1 to PUD. The rezoning allows a consistent zoning designation throughout the Shadow Creek North development area and has no impact on the development plan. Staff has received no public comments or questions regarding the rezoning. Planning and Zoning Commission and staff both recommend approval.
Thank you. Questions? So all we're asked to do tonight is the first consideration, but we have to close the public hearing first.
Second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Before we do, is there anyone here in the chamber or online that has questions about the Warrior Lane rezoning? I see no one here in the chamber. Pete, do we have anyone online who wishes to comment on this?
For those who want to raise their hand, you can use the participant tab icon. Click on that, and at the bottom of that screen, you should see a button that says raise hand, and that's a great way to catch my attention. For those participating by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *6 and then unmute yourself by hitting *9. Mayor, I do not see any hands going up at this time.
Very good. Then we'll vote on the motion to close the public hearing. Would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post the vote? So the public hearing has been closed. We're looking now at the first consideration.
The first consideration, proposed ordinance 1111, the War Lane rezoning from R1 to PUD.
Second.
A motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote? The first reading passes by a vote of 4-0. We'll now move on to the next public hearing here on Forest Avenue rezoning.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, Sterling Inn has been an ongoing discussion in terms of housing and potential reuse for the property. So before you tonight is the proposal to rezone the property from a C3 to PUD and allow the conversion from hotel to multifamily housing. The developer has put together a presentation. He's here tonight. So I'll hit the high points and let him tell you more specifics on the project, and then we can have questions. So the property, as a reminder, is a total of 112 units. Those are studio and 1-bedroom units through 14 buildings with 1 clubhouse. The current condition of the site is in general disrepair and in need of maintenance, mainly in the form of cosmetic work. The site is not at a point where demolition is necessary, but redevelopment could represent a financially viable alternative for the property owner as well as the city. With the rezoning, staff has been working with the potential buyer on a development agreement to outline redevelopment guidelines that's in your packet. Some items to note in the agreement is the desire to restrict the parking lot to 9-foot stalls. They're currently 10-foot stalls. And although that doesn't meet current code, it does get more parking on the property, which we'd all be in favor of, I'm sure. The developer is also proposing a number of amenities on site to reconcile the required parkland dedication component. The balance in the amount owed would be provided in the form of payment in lieu. That exact amount hasn't been finalized yet. They're still working on cost and estimates. Overall, the conversion from hotel to multifamily residential with the proposed improvements is projected to have a negligible impact, financial impact to the city. Additionally, the property would not be able to be used for multifamily and short-term housing at the same time. That's in the development agreement as well. Planning and Zoning Commission heard this at their January meeting, unanimously voted approval with the condition that a fence be included in the buffer to the north and south of the property lines. Staff has been working with the applicant, and we would prefer the fence only be required if and when there is a issue with parking and people crossing over from one property to the next. So only if and when that's a problem. That's what staff would like to see. So with that, Jason Grove is here with Grove Holdings, and he has a presentation for you.
Right. Can I ask a few questions?
Go ahead.
Can you explain a little bit more on the park dedication piece? You said there was a piece of that on the park dedication.
Right, so the parkland dedication, in the code for residential properties, they're required to provide a certain amount of parkland dedication. There's a equation in the code on how to figure that. So it's a little over an acre. Obviously, since the site is fully developed, there's no extra land. They physically can't require that. So it's in form of an amount currently. So they are looking to provide a lot of amenities on the property for the tenants that will be there. And then if there's anything that's not reconciled, that would be in the form of a payment that would go to the Greenbelt Landing project.
But the money first goes to internally in the project for playgrounds or whatever else?
A portion of it. Doug has been working with the applicant on that part of the project.
So typical application of the parkland dedication ordinance for the city is in the event that it is a residential project. There is a formula, as Jill had indicated, that defines how much land is to be deeded as part of the development process. We do not have a fee established in the ordinance itself. It is simply a dedication of land, and that is in reflect of a number of different legal challenges within the state in terms of impact fees. So we don't have a fee, we have a dedication. Obviously, in this particular case, we have a unique circumstance in which land is not available. There are no acres to dedicate to the city. And in this particular case, the city has no real need or value of land in this location. So in this circumstance, as part of the development agreement process, we've been discussing with the developer how to reconcile that circumstance. Again, this proposed development is unique in that it will have on-site amenities for the tenants that are related to recreational or quality of life improvements, whether or not that is the patio area or the outdoor spaces, the recreation spaces inside, looking at a dog run type facility as well on site. We're looking at finding the appropriate balance between the intent, which is the provision of park and recreation amenities, to ensure that we aren't setting bad precedent in this particular case. But it is a balancing act between trying to find the value between what is being placed on the site and what would otherwise need to be provided by the city. Because certainly some of these residents, we would hope, take advantage of the adjacent parks, the green belt and so forth. So we think that there is some appropriate contribution coming to the city for that.
But in many cases in a development like this, we would not be, I mean, to them, that's an amenity to the development, right? And they're all building those type of things now, decks or, outside meeting areas with grills and everything else, right? I mean, that's just kind of the norm. And so I get that where you're in a tight position in this one. Just don't want to go too far down the road of saying these are offsetting park dedication when really to put a development like this, you have to put those things in today. A lot of them. So I'll be interested to see what else they're going to be putting in above and beyond what I would consider the normal development at this point.
Yes, and the applicant can kind of walk you through some of the improvements that they're proposing to make on the site. But again, we have no requirement in terms of multifamily residential. If you brought in a proposed new apartment project in the west side of town, there are no requirements to provide those amenities.
Sure.
Obviously, it's purely a marketing issue,
Right.
sales issue. So in this particular case, again, because of unique circumstances, we have to find the right balance between the level of investment that's being made into the property and obviously then ensuring that that level of investment is still reasonable in terms of rent rates to make this project viable. But again, the applicant can certainly go into more details in terms of what will be developed on the property.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick. Doug, could you address the parking or Jill address the parking as far as, I know they're reducing it down to 9 foot. They've done several measures to increase that, but how does that go? Or is there any concerns with actual parking spaces versus required?
I'll just give you the quick synopsis. And again, I think the developer has some information that will help with the conversation, but certainly the parking is one of the concerns that we have just from a reuse of this particular property. It was based on a hotel configuration, which obviously the demand for parking is different than a commercial application than an apartment complex. They have other units that they have surveyed to try and ascertain what is the necessary demand on a per unit basis. They feel comfortable that they have a requisite number of stalls on site. And in this particular case, the property has a unique arrangement in which it is not on a public street, but is on a private drive that would facilitate some additional off-site, if you will, parking. Our biggest concern from staff's perspective is those concepts all make good sense, but we also know that the nature of folks is I want to park as close to where I'm going as possible. And in this particular case, it's potential that the closest location may be an adjacent property. And certainly don't want to create a situation where we have conflicts between two properties and in essence, the city is being asked to referee between those circumstances. So although we may not have all of the answers associated with that, we do think the framework is in place with respect to this development agreement. The development agreement does require approval of a site plan before the actual development or construction process. So we believe between now and that point, the property owner will have an opportunity to have further conversations with the adjacent property owners, see if there's arrangements that can be made, ensure that their methods and manner of on-site parking management is appropriate. And then if there are still concerns, we can look at other techniques or mitigation measures. What we're hoping to do is again, Jill had indicated, is to the degree that we don't have barriers, walls, fences, things that really prevent kind of that communal nature and tries to turn this into a segregated space. We don't think that's in the best interest of the project or the neighborhood. So to the degree that we can find solutions and to the degree that the property owner can work cooperatively with its neighbors, we're hopeful that that's the right answer.
Overall staff would they be comfortable then with the measures that have been proposed to mitigate those risks then overall from a high level?
From a high level, yes. Again, I think the applicant will kind of walk you through some of the ways that they do parking management on their other properties. And yes, we think that although the numbers are a little thin in terms of the total counts, we do think that if the property owner is diligent in managing the condition with its tenants, that it should be able to be managed without having to have these significant interventions.
Thank you.
Other questions for Doug or Jill?
I just have a comment, and that is that I recall that we were willing to be quite flexible on parking requirements when considering a town center proposal a number of years ago. I don't know how this would compare to that, but it sounds, we've been open to this before.
We've certainly, as we've evaluated projects, if you will, times have changed. The nature of having the default 2 parking stalls per dwelling unit as a simple standard answer, we've come to the conclusion that one size really doesn't fit all with development projects. So whether or not it's the town center or whether or not it's a senior living property or some other kind of unique circumstance, we've tried to take a more measured approach, really try to understand what the demand is rather than simply using default answers. So in this case, as I said, the developer has other properties, other conversion properties, other small types of units, and provided appropriate information we think is reasonable and plausible. And again, provided that the appropriate measures are taken to manage the relationship with the tenants, we think it'll be adequate.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions for Doug or Jill? We welcome the applicant forward. And if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah. Jason Grove, 28445 Granite Court, Adel, Iowa. Okay. Yep, that's it. Let's use these 2 points right here to advance. Right and left. There you go. Ready to go. Okay. Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for your time tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Again, this is the Sterling repositioning project. I have, there's probably 15 slides here to walk through with you guys. A little bit more detail. Maybe it'll answer your questions. If not, I'd be happy to go through any more. I don't have all the details on here that, so if you have additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those. This first page is just a cover page. Most of the information in here is just a background to tell you a little bit more about myself, which I will be going through here in the next slide. So I'm going to skip past this. First page here, Sterling reposition project. We have it as a renamed option of the Vibe at 8035. Vibe meaning, new, fresh, different. And obviously the 8035 off the interstate there. 112 apartment units. There's a $7.2 million total investment in the project. You can see some of the timelines below that. We're really hoping to acquire the property in March to begin construction phase to still hit a leasing season for this, hopefully by June and through July, August, hitting some of the peaks of the leasing season this year still. Project needs, thanks to the help of Jill and Doug, they have been great to work with. They've given us a lot of ideas on this project that the project need list has dropped down quite a bit. So really right now at this point, we just are in need of site approval and city council approval as planning and zoning approved last week. Background on myself, I've grew up in Adel, Iowa. I went to school at Drake University. I have this is a little bit dated here, between 600, 700 multifamily properties in the Des Moines metro, Waukee, Urbandale, potentially Clive, West Des Moines. Adel, Winterset, Des Moines. My portfolio that I manage myself is a long-term hold, and that's what this project would be as well. I'm not a flipper. I don't come in to try to flip it, turn it over to somebody else. I'm producing this property. I want to renovate this property for a long-term hold position. With the exception of 7 years of my life, I've lived in Iowa, Minneapolis for 7 years, and the rest of the time here in Des Moines area. There's one other project you guys may be familiar with. It was the AIB College Campus. That was recently, was one of our last purchases. Tina, I believe, is on the call with us. She's my partner on this. We had purchased that. It was a very similar setup with a rezoning, reparceling of all the properties. I believe that one was zoned industrial, parking issues, all kinds of utility issues with utilities being shared by multiple buildings. A lot of challenges. Vacant. The whole property was vacant at the time. It's handy when you want to do your construction phase, when you don't have to shuffle people around, but also very stressful to get it done and get it full. And I'm happy to provide or share that property in 2020 was by City View Magazine top new property in Des Moines, and again finalist this year for top multifamily property. We have a long track record of multifamily reconstruction and reinvestment and long-term holds.
Looked like Tina wanted to say something.
Oh, yep. Sorry, Tina, go ahead. You got your slide up.
Yep, Tina, you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead and let's see if we can get your audio
Okay.
this time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just wanted
Very
to say
faint.
that
Matthew, can you turn that up for us a little bit?
can you hear me?
Tina, can you hear us now?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Still very faint. One moment.
It's weird because I can hear you just fine, Tina. I just don't
Okay.
think
Can hear
I
us.
can hear you in the chamber very well.
We just can't hear them.
All right, let's
Okay.
try now. Can we hear you now?
Whoa.
Is that better?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that we have finally.
Finally figured it out. Gotcha.
Let me just take a moment here to
I
breathe a little easier.
Yeah, I could hear, I think it was Amy earlier, if I followed that right, but I just wanted to let everybody know that I am on. Jason was talking about his background. I have, now it's almost 25 years of property management experience. I own my own management company. And as luck would have it, I went to AIB, and then Jason and I purchased that and redid that project as well. So I'm also a licensed broker here in Iowa. And again, as Jason said, we're partners on the project. So I just wanted to kind of chime in and let you know that I was here in case there's questions later.
Thank you, Tina. We appreciate that. Jason?
All right. Tina and her team, Optimum Real Estate Management, will be managing this property. They manage all of my portfolio along with a couple thousand more in the Des Moines area. So they do a phenomenal job, and very happy to work with Tina. This just gives you a quick view of the number of multifamilies in the area. In the quarter-mile radius, there are 0 in the half-mile. There is only senior housing down by the Aquatic Center. And then the 1 mile radius, less than 100 multifamily properties, which I think presents a good opportunity to provide some housing in the immediate area there. Actually, I was just on Google Maps today because I had to print out a map to go map out for site planning where the dead trees are on the property. It's new. I have been looking at Google Maps for a long time, and the Clive Behavioral Health Center is now officially on there. So I just saw that for the first time today. But we have been working with the president there about potential job housing opportunities. between us and them. They're very interested to hear about the project and understand what those opportunities might exist. This just gives you a couple pictures of the current property. We'll go through a little bit of the areas that we're going to be improving on it. Rents in this property, there's studio studio units. There's 84 of those. They'll rent between $725 to $775 a month. The 1 bedroom with a loft will be approximately about $975 a month. The improvements that we're going to do, all of the interiors of all the units will be remodeled, all the flooring, cabinets, countertops, paint, lighting fixtures, plumbing fixtures. We're adding a new outdoor lifestyle patio, barbecue area. We have a dog park that we're adding in and a couple different dog runs. All new landscaping, removal of all the 40 dead ash trees that are on the property, full new exterior paint. And one unique thing that this property has that the AIB campus also did, the AIB campus was full of furniture. It was furnished for the students. And so this one is the same. Tina did a phenomenal job with AIB of reaching out to nonprofits in the central Iowa area. And I would guess between 30 to 40 different nonprofits came to the facility and took truckloads, semi-loads, containers full of couches, beds, desks. It helped a lot of people in the community, and we will have to do something similar. So if your wheels are turning, you got an idea of a nonprofit agency that could use some furniture, let me know. That'll be something that we'll be looking to do right away. I did talk about this already, long-term investment with local management. There will be a full-time management manager on site and full-time maintenance tech on site at the property. This just gives a quick property valuation, gives you an idea of where the property is. The 2021 property valuation, because of the hotel reduction, I think there was a 30% reduction in hotel values. That's now 2.5 million or 2.6 million. After stabilization, based on pro formas, we have it as a value around $8.3 million. Surrounding hotels, we feel, because there's 9 surrounding hotels around in the quarter-mile radius around it, that we think the hotel motel tax will be absorbed by the surrounding opportunities. This was a slide that was taken off of the housing strategy report back in 2018 for Clive, where it showed a housing gap and a need in the Clive community of 1,000 units. And this is 112 units. It doesn't completely fill that void, but I think is a good step in the right direction. Hotel competitors, like I said, here's the 9. Just gives you a quick visual on where those are and the proximity of those, and the approximate cost standpoint being very similar in price. Parking today, currently there are 122 spaces that exist. There should be 4. That is a typo there. There's 4 ADA spots currently. Restriping the lot will add up to 100. Well, it'll be a total of 133 spaces. We will need to have 6 ADA parking spaces available. We will be issuing a parking permit system. We do this at multiple other properties that we have. We do not have any parking issues that are ongoing. We issue parking permits. We have a car capacity limit per person, and that's what we would do in this situation. I believe in our numbers, when you factor in the number of single occupancy versus double occupancies. And those numbers are in the documents that you guys have. We need, and how many of those are single car tenants or single mothers with kids that aren't driving. We have a need of 110 car spaces. We will have 133, and that's not including the Forest Avenue parking that we also have access to. Right now, the buffer yards, the landscaping around the property is not there, dying, dead, or gone. That buffer yard, those buffer yards are being addressed in the site plan. In fact, I got marker all over my hand because I was walking around marking live and dead trees today on a piece of paper. So that site plan will be produced, I believe, probably next week.
Hey, Jason, can I jump in?
Go ahead, Ted.
I apologize, but just on that parking, the 110 spaces that you estimate are the need is based off of a less than full occupancy estimate. Do you know what the number of spaces you would need if you had full occupancy?
I don't have those numbers in front of me of what that.
I think you were at 94%, if I remember right.
Yeah, we based the occupancy at 94%, which is very standard across the portfolio.
Yeah, I just think you got a plan for worst case, right? And so you would want, just if you happen to, because the market changes or whatever, you get to 100%, you know, how many spots do you need? I think that's what I understand, just kind of trying to figure out what you generally would need, but I think we also need a plan for worst case.
Yeah, so that 110 spots, and if we have 133 plus 75 additional, we're way within that range. I'm not doing the math right now off the top of my head on what that would mean at 100% versus 94%. If we need 110, maybe that's 120. I don't know what that number, if you guys have a calculator there and you want to.
That's fine. Yeah, I guess I just saw that you weren't basing it off 100% occupancy, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
But okay, thank you.
Yep.
Those 75 on Forest, that's a shared street, correct?
Correct.
How do you come up with 75 for you?
75 spots is the total, taking the driveways out, that's not guaranteed for me. If I said that wrong.
Yeah, and we can't, I mean, wouldn't be a great assumption to say you have 75 when there are other businesses. I'm not saying they're going to use them, but that's not any numbers I want to take into consideration as Forest Avenue when it's a shared street with multiple businesses. I'm not going to give it away in this council meeting.
Right. It is also a private street, so it's not.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not a Clive property. You can park on one side of the street. It's the east side, which is opposite of Sterling. So yeah, I think you're also working with figuring out if some of those other property owners are okay with street parking. If they need street parking, if they don't need street parking, that's still kind of an open question.
I think too, how we do it on other places where we put a letter out, let's get a signature of some of these other property owners saying they're okay with that prior to us saying 75 additional spaces are available for you. And yeah, it's a private street, but it's not your street to be giving away the 75 spots, right? So I would refrain, I mean, personally, I would not feel comfortable adding those to your parking.
Well, I think what the applicant is saying, if I heard correctly, you were at 94%, you had 110 spaces. Is that correct? Is that what you said? So if you go up to, if you've got 133, I think the math is that the 100% falls within that 133. So wouldn't have to look at those other 75.
Right.
Okay. Other questions? If not, go ahead, Jason.
Okay. Full-time on-site management, I just mentioned this. 24-hour maintenance is provided 24/7. I know one of the questions in concern for this property was the number of police service calls, disturbance calls at this property. Last in the zoning meeting, there was a number that was thrown out. I think it was in the 700 range.
709.
709, thank you. 709. We do a lot of screening, and it's very important to us to maintain civility in our properties. And we do credit checks, background checks, sexual predator, criminal background, to help those unqualified candidates to screen those out. Our on-site management does handle a lot of disturbances today. Now, once it gets to a certain level, we will call police for assistance there. But I don't think in my 20 years of experience have 700 calls to all my properties. So I don't anticipate this being an issue. And I think it would be well south of where it's at today. Optimum Tina and her regional vice president that will also be overseeing this property have over 50 years of management experience. The property will participate in the crime-free multifamily housing program. There's a minimum income of 30,000, which does not qualify for Section 8 housing standards because that's over the Section 8 limits. On the property, in the southwest corner of the property, this is the water retention zone. It's a backup system. We are turning this, we're going to tear out the fencing, tear out the walls, redo all of this area. What we have to do is we have to make sure when we're done, we want to turn this into a green space, a dog park for tenants. But we have to maintain the volume of water retention. And that is 15,700 cubic feet of water retention. And that's what it'll be when we're done. We have Peld's Engineering Design Services that will be surveying that for us.
So that basketball court's going to go and that would be water retention, or that would be the dog park?
Yep, that'll be all grass. We're going to grass that and put some seating in there. New stairs. New fence along this wall over here. But yes, yeah, that sport court will go. This here is just a picture of the pool. It's in disrepair. There's a pool and a hot tub and a pool house up in that top left-hand picture. You can kind of see that corner of the pool house there. We want to turn this into lifestyle patio, putting some greenery around it, a couple trees inside of it, yard games, shelter, barbecue area for tenants. We really want to make this a focal point. It's sitting right in the middle of the property, and we really want to make this a special spot for residents. Garbage enclosure is outdated. We're going to be removing the shed, adding an additional garbage dumpster in there and a recycle bin. We have all the parameters of the materials needed, metal gates, block work around the exterior, screening around the dumpster. Another project that we will be taking on with this. There's been a couple sheds added on to the original shed in the site plan, and they sit on the parking lot right now. Just the removal of these two sheds. We are keeping the original one that has a little taller peak. The lean-to and the other shed, those will be gone. That actually frees up 3 additional parking spots in that particular area. One of those will be ADA. That'll be the area for one of our ADA spots. Landscaping around the buildings, like I said, it has just been neglected. You can see a lot of washouts around sidewalks, plantings and rock and mulch areas are just, they're just in disrepair. We have a landscaping plan on the inside of the property internally, and then on the buffer yards. That will all be part of the landscape or the site plan. The mechanicals on the street side, this is the Forest Avenue side. And all these mechanicals will be screened with new landscaping. It's just an example of the buffer yard on the south side. Here's one of the ash trees, the remains of one of the ash trees. And you can see, you know, that's pretty easy access across to that parking lot. And that's something we only have, keep in mind here, we have 4 feet of property from that curb about right to that stump. That's the only area buffer that we have to fill in there.
So Jason, a lot of ash trees and in various levels of dying for the most
Yeah.
part. You guys are gonna tear all those out, and what's your plan on landscaping from trees, and what's mandatory on that, Jill?
They actually meet the minimum tree requirement currently. Even with the removal of those 40 ash trees, the site was way overplanted compared to what would be current requirement at the time. So they're going to meet their tree requirement, but obviously if you take down 40 trees, you're gonna have some gaps. So we're looking to obviously get those filled with something, a reasonable, number of species and variety as replacements and appropriate sizes for where they need to go back.
Thank you.
Mhm.
If this is just a couple pictures of the ash trees that are on the property. Capital improvement budget, let's just kind of, again, reiterate some of the areas that we're going to be touching on. All surface areas of the exterior and interior of the property, along with all the landscaping. There's some concrete repair work that has to be done, is all part of this. Signage, that's the interstate sign on the bottom right and the entrance sign for the new name and logo. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Jason. Other questions for Jason? Well, thank you very much. Ted, did you have any further questions?
Well, I have a question or two for Matt or Doug or Jill. So I think Jill mentioned that there's minimal impact financially to the city. And can you see me? Yeah. And I guess I'm just curious about that analysis because it seems like last time we looked at this, there was a pretty heavy impact to the city annually on that. So I don't remember the specifics, but I was just curious if you could talk us through what may have changed.
Sure. The primary change that has come about on this particular project is really just a matter of refining the understanding of the entirety of the project scope. So certainly when we started having conversations about this project, there were concerns related to the financial fiscal impact of the project on the city of Clive, kind of on a net basis. As we've gotten into the project, have more clarity around where the values are likely going to be in terms of the assessed value of the property at stabilization, having clarity and understanding around what contributions the developer would be making, and also having understanding of what the overall project would do for the city in terms of those non-property tax revenues and demands for service. So as you start kind of pulling all of the pieces together with this project, as we've gotten more information and understanding, certainly if the project is able to perform at the level that the applicant is suggesting, that is a significant increase in property value. Simply from an assessed value, going from 2.6 to something in the order of 7 million or so. That helps close the gap quite a bit. The other significant variable is the hotel motel tax that would be lost because of the conversion to a multifamily residential property. In this particular case, there is no means of offset for that. It isn't a hotel. There won't be collection of hotel motel tax that won't come to the city directly. Certainly some portion of what would be lost from that is likely being absorbed by those other facilities. But we, aren't able to calculate that to a specific dollar. So we had to make some estimates.
But in its current condition, as it continues to fail as a hotel, those numbers are going to significantly go down anyways. That place is not so easy on your eyes.
It's certainly a possibility. We did not, in terms of the analysis that we completed, we did not, if you will, continue to decline the property. We thought that, yes, it's not great, but it's probably not going to deteriorate substantially in terms of the collection of the hotel motel tax. So in any case, the hotel motel tax kind of balance, if you will, then you start looking at what those other related revenues that are associated with road use tax on a per capita basis, the increase in water, sanitary sewer, other charges, sales tax increases, things of that nature. Again, when you kind of work all of the math out on an overall basis, we believe that it's with this particular project that's presented by this developer, we think that the arrangement is reasonable, close, if you will, to ensuring that the city is on a whole. So again, this particular project and this particular application, we think makes reasonable sense for the city.
So Doug, correct me if I'm wrong here. It sounds like to me that the biggest jump here, though, is primarily in assessed value, and our assumption that assessed value is going to increase pretty substantially. Is that accurate?
Assessed value is certainly a big help in the equation. But again, it's really assessed value in establishing or ensuring that we have that in place. It's the contributions that'll be made on the project by the developer. And then there'll be these kind of lagging revenues associated with occupancy. Again, we see all of those as being important components to ensuring that the city is made whole fiscally.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. My last question then was, we always talk about precedent and the concern about setting precedent. By going this route, are we putting ourselves in a box when the next hotel comes, or do we maintain flexibility just based off the individual situation?
Yeah, certainly that was a concern again at the beginning as we started iterating on this idea. As we've delved into this project, it really has come to light that this particular property is very unique in terms of its capability of being converted from a hotel to a multifamily residential project. This is a vintage of hotel property that really acts like a multifamily property in that it is a townhome type regime. All of the exits into the units are to an individual exterior space versus kind of the traditional hotel center corridor, shared common areas. So we think this particular type absolutely provides that differentiation between this hotel conversion and maybe another that would want to. Secondarily, what the developer is proposing to do on this property and how the investments will be made to bring property into compliance and conformance with a multifamily standard, we think also separates this from other opportunities. That being said, if another hotel of a similar circumstance wanted to make the level of investment and provide kind of the similar deal, it might still be appropriate. So this project that's being presented is unique, but I don't want to say that if another one that was similarly situated, we may come to the same conclusions if that property owner is willing to work with us as this one has.
Thanks, Doug.
All right. Other questions for Doug or Jill?
I'd like to make a brief statement,
Go
Your
ahead,
Honor.
Susan.
That is, I really appreciate all the questions that my council colleagues have raised. I really appreciate all the good work that staff has done to bring this to a conclusion. But I also want to say I really appreciate, Mr. Grove, what you have done to really do your homework in identifying how this type of project really does fill a need in our city. And it's very notable to recognize that within a 1 mile radius, there isn't another solution. It's been coming forward to fill a type of housing need that we have said we know we have since our 2018 look at housing. I'm very well aware of the AIB project and the success there. I congratulate you for it. And I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to work with you and Clyde. So a lot of thanks all around.
Thank you.
Move to close public hearing.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post that vote? The motion to close public hearing passes by a vote of 4-0.
Move that ordinance number 1112 having been considered by the council to vote on passes prior to its final adoption.
Second.
We have a second. Again, this is the first reading. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And would the clerk please post the vote? First consideration of ordinance 1112 passes by a vote of 4-0. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have proposed ordinance number 1113 regarding U-turn regulations. Matt.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a kind of a cleanup item in the code. We were going through a prosecution. We had a specific request near one of our elementary schools for a prohibited U-turn during a pickup area. And it just happened not to be in an intersection. And it was determined that because we didn't have it in our code that you have to, it's prohibited to have U-turns at posted locations, the judge threw out that particular ticket. So this was just an item we caught in the code. Legal counsel actually caught it. And we would request that the council approve the first reading. And again, no need to waive the third on this one, but just approve the first reading and we'll get this item cleaned up and clarified in our city code.
Thank you, Matt. Would someone like to?
I'd move that ordinance number 1113, having been considered by the council, be voted on for passage prior to its final adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the ordinance. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote?
Got to make sure I got enough ones in there.
And would the clerk please post the vote? First reading of ordinance 1113 passes 4-0. Thank you. Next, we need to move on to filling the vacancy created by my election. And Matt, way to go.
Your Honor, this is, as the council directed, your intent to fill that vacancy by appointment. We've prepared the appropriate documentation to publish that notice of intent in the paper once it is published, and we're projecting that to be Monday when it would be published. That would start the 14-day clock too. If there was a special petition that wanted to be submitted, and that would get us past the next council meeting, that was the desire of the council. So this is just reflecting your direction that you provided back in November, and we would encourage council to move forward with this resolution.
Move the resolution directing publication of notice of intent to appoint to fill city council vacancy.
Second.
Resolution and second. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post the vote? The motion to appoint to fill city council vacancy. Passes by a vote of 4-0. Next item is the airport. Matt?
Thank you, Your Honor. Follow up from your December 9th meeting with the presentation from the Des Moines Airport representatives. This is just following up on that direction that you provided staff to prepare the appropriate resolution indicating our support and financial commitment. What this outlines for us is approximately a little over $500,000 financial commitment to the airport terminal project to be paid by the end of 2026. And so what we would do pending your approval of this resolution is then, we've got some time to plan out how that is allocated. And we'll bring that back to the council in terms of a schedule of where these proceeds could come from. Again, we've got flexibility on timing. And so far what I've heard, and I think I indicated in my memo, there's a number of cities have approved this and actually some that are considering it as well this week. And so it seems to be a lot of support rallying for this terminal project. And then hopefully that leverages the $300 million from the state and federal government that we hope pushes the project over the finish line. So with that, Your Honor, I would recommend approval.
Questions? If not, we need a resolution.
Approval.
Second.
Resolution and a second. Further discussion.
I just want to go on the record one more time. I am very supportive of this airport and the remodel. I am a bit disappointed in the Des Moines Partnership for really not outlining the push for corporate donations in this. Put it all on municipalities and put the pressure on them in such a short period of time. To come to us like what we requested here, or I requested, just to show some corporate backing. I am disappointed in the Des Moines Partnership for that. Saying that, I'm very supportive of the project.
One comment I'll add to that is I know that they've hired an owner's rep to work with the airport. They are going through a process of updating financial projections for the cost to build this airport because the numbers they've been basing this off of are from 2018. And I'm aware that they're appreciative of your raising that question because it's probably not an either or. It's probably an all and
right
that's going to need to happen to make this work. So very appreciated.
Any further discussion? If not, would the council please vote on the resolution? And would the clerk please post the vote on the airport terminal project? And that vote passes by a vote of 4-0. Next, we have Metro Waste Authority. And Leslie, we're pleased to have you with us tonight.
Yes, Mayor, congratulations. I'm
Thank you.
pleased as well to be here with you. Council, thank you for your time. My name is Leslie Earlbeck, and I'm the Deputy Director at Metro Waste Authority, and I've been with the agency for 10 years. And although I'm very passionate about garbage, recycling, and yard waste collection, I recognize that not everybody shares that same passion, and you have a lot on your busy agenda tonight. And so I'm here to be as brief as you would like me to be. And then if you would like to dive into some details regarding these contracts and our recommendation, I'd be happy to walk down that path with you as well. So tonight we're here to share with you the outcome of an RFP that we issued back in September for those 3 services mentioned. I'm happy to report that we received 4 very competitive bids, 2 from national haulers that do work here in the Metro currently, 1 local company who also does just as much work here locally. And then we also drew in a bid from what would be a new regional hauler to the region as well. And so we were pleased to get those bid responses, and they were very competitive, as I mentioned. I'm here tonight just to merely make a recommendation based on Metro Waste Authority's experience managing garbage contracts, recycling contracts, garbage contracts, as well as the relationships that we've built with these haulers over time and the negotiations that we did as a result of our review process of the RFP responses as well. After thorough review of those bids, we evaluated the responses based on 8 criteria, ranging from everything from, of course, price to experience as well. In the end, Metro Waste Authority would recommend ASI, who is your current garbage and yard waste hauler, to continue those services here for the city, and Waste Management for the recycling service collection. Those contracts have been in place for anywhere from 10 to 20 years. And so as with most goods and services, those prices in that period of time have changed some. And although we are here to recommend these two services coming with a price increase of a combined $2.84 per month, which would put those services at $15.05 for garbage and recycling collection for Clive residents, we do firmly believe that those are very firm market value rates. And with that, I would answer any questions that the council may or may have.
Questions?
So Leslie, certainly appreciate your efforts on this. It's complex stuff and, it's like herding cats. It's especially when you're dealing with multiple cities right there. I guess my question, I understand that we've had artificial low rates for some time. But my thought is that, as we combine all these cities to get the best deal, is that the best deal we can get? A 15 to 23% increase in pricing? That seems to me pretty high.
Pretty high. Yep. And I can very firmly tell you, yes, that is absolutely the best rate that we can get for a variety of reasons. We started this project actually over a year and a half ago when we sat down and built a very complex engineering model. We wanted to find out what were the best bundles. So we actually tore apart all of our existing bundles that exist here in the metro because we wanted to know what communities should Clive be partnered with. We also had extensive conversations with not just the 4 haulers that bid on these RFPs, but several others as well. And we wanted to know what makes a competitive bid. What is going to make you hungry to come to the table to bid on these services? And we made sure that we took not only their wants and needs into consideration, but we also had lengthy conversations with the cities as well. So we were sure to not give too much in terms of the service side. Also, in reviewing the 4 criteria points, the bid responses financially that we received were quite tight. There really weren't any outliers. The haulers that we're working with are very familiar with our services. Because this wasn't a hard RFP, we also had the opportunity as staff to go back and do some negotiations in which the haulers did take a little bit off of their originally proposed price. But really through the relationships that we have with the haulers, we know roughly where their margins are. We're not here to drive any of them out of business. We are very proud of the fact that we have such a competitive market here in the metro. Additionally, these rates, while percentage wise, you're correct, is a little hard to stomach. When you look around at the rates that people are paying in other communities, these are still amongst the lowest in the region. And they are still certainly far surpassing the lowest when you take into consideration those communities that are not participating in consolidated collection.
How long is those prices locked in for?
So the contract itself is a 7-year term with 2 3-year extensions at Metro Waste Authority's sole discretion, which is ultimately the city's sole discretion. And so anytime before we're going to go into a contract extension, we get the feedback from the cities and their how their experience is going. I do want to mention also that Metro Waste Authority, not to the pleasure of a few of the haulers, negotiated in a 4% cap in terms of the annual adjustment that we go through every year. Rather complicated formula. Again, won't go into the details unless you want me to, but annually we adjust rates based on a formula that is inclusion of CPI, fuel, and landfill rates. And there are some rare instances in which, especially in this market, those rate adjustments would perhaps surpass 4%. But we, through our negotiations with the haulers, have put it in the contract that there will not be any more than 4% swings and adjustments, which should help with the budgeting process.
So 7-year set contract with up to 4% price increase per year.
Yep. And in the time that I've been managing these contracts for 10 years, I would say it is probably a third of the time those annual adjustments increase in an increase itself. About a third of the time they remain the same, and about a third of the time they decrease.
Thank you.
Thank you, these rates.
Yeah, Ankeny, the city of Ankeny does not have consolidated collection. We walked that path with the city, determined if they did want to go through consolidated collection. Ultimately, they chose another path forward for their residents. But on average, just for garbage alone, the residents of Ankeny are paying about $15 a month just for garbage, and that doesn't include recycling. And they also have a number of different haulers that are going up and down their roads. So.
Another question, Matt?
Just from staff's perspective, just to add in, we also feel this is the best deal that the city is going to get with the regional approach that they took. Also, what I like with this approach is they are with their MWA cities, we're kind of equalizing the 1505 across, so you don't have this kind of competition. Now, a city, we've always chosen as a city to pass that straight through to our residents. Some cities may choose to subsidize here and there, but for the most part, pass that rate straight through. That would be staff's recommendation. So there would be an increase that would come before you as a part of the budgeting process and the normal ordinances for other utility rate increases that we'll talk about more later tonight, to take that to the 1505. What staff is proposing is, as you know, we've talked about this in the past, we've had an administrative fee associated with that rate. We're actually proposing to remove that to lessen the increase even more. And also because Metro Waste has taken over the managing of the contract. And again, we're recommending that tonight as well, to continue that process forward and managing the customer service. We feel that lessens the need for that administrative fee that we had for our staff support. So that is also a way we can keep the increase down, and it would stay just at the 1505. And then we stay competitive with those other Metro Waste cities. So again, we feel this is going to be the best deal for our residents. Again, you never like to see double-digit percentage increases on any rates. But we feel that this is going to be the best for our residents, and also to get it under a 7-year deal with favorable terms over those 7 years. Again, I think staff feels this is the best approach we're going to get for garbage and recycling.
Ted, did you have a question?
Well, no, I agree. I think this is as good of a deal as we're going to get. I appreciate what Leslie and Mike have done. I think they're doing a tremendous job. I guess my only just simple question is, was there any magic behind the 7-year number, as opposed to 5 or 10 or what have you? What was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, there was a lot of consideration that was not only given to the 7-year initial contract, but also the duration of those extensions. And ultimately that was a result of hauler feedback. 7 years, very common initial term. 3 years is enough for haulers. If they know they're going to be given a 3-year extension, it's enough for them to make investments in the equipment and to hire more staffing. And so ultimately it allows for their own planning and reinvestment in the communities that we would recommend.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Again, we're looking for just a resolution tonight.
Move the resolution approving the agreement with Metro Waste Authority, managing recycling, solid waste and yard waste collection from July 1st, 2022 to July 30th, 2029.
Second.
A motion and a second by Susan. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And Councilmember McCoy is abstaining. So the Metro Waste resolution passes by a vote of 3 and 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Next, we're ready to move into our budget discussion.
I want to run, Leslie.
Hi, Jim, how are you?
Now's the time to leave. Yeah, that's right. You don't want to listen to me. All right.
How do I get out of it?
Well, we can put you on mute for the rest of the meeting. I mean, that's
Difficulty, Ted, technical.
Technical difficulties.
so just on the desktop. Yeah.
It's a little wonky when you're in there with the buttons because they kind of overlap on each other.
I'll share it right now then.
I'll break
The
it.
version that it's in.
Should probably do a
And
lap.
then
Everybody Everybody else got to move around.
Now we're changing display settings.
Wonder why they're setting up.
Display duplicate. There you go.
All right.
Just so you don't feel it.
Oh, stretching out. Do we need a minute?
Staying up to your arrival. Drive on. May we be seated?
All right. So this is the first workshop for the proposed budget for FY 22-23. Jump right in. And so this, the focus tonight is the utilities and road use budget. Primarily encompasses the public works operations, although it does dip into other operations of the city beyond public works, but we'll kind of focus on those areas tonight. What's on the slide here, and again, I won't read them off, is kind of the financial strategy that I discuss with you every strategic planning process that we have for these specific funds. One thing you will notice in the presentation is a little bit of a change proposed to one of those strategies. Is we have some fiscal challenges in the road use tax fund. And so we're going to need to look at how we have the capital support that's coming out of that fund and do some adjustments to that and make up for it somewhere else. Because I know it's a high priority of the council of what those capital resources go towards for our roadway rehabilitation work. So that is one adjustment that we're looking at with this proposal before you tonight. Just a quick overview, and I'll transition over to Jeff to get into these next items, but Public Works, the makeup of the department and the staffing and some of the staffing changes that have been made over the last few years. Most recently being this kind of creating the senior operations specialist position. We found that to be successful, and we actually have a couple others that we'd like to propose to you tonight. And a lot of it has to do with, particularly for the mechanic position, is just a difficulty in recruiting. We're finding that we're going to need to be more competitive on that one. So that is a reason for two more of those promotions tonight that we're proposing. Again, a relatively small dollar, but can be impactful in the organization to provide those promotional opportunities. So that is the one addition that we're looking at that's in the proposal for you tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to kind of give his overview that's included in the budget memo in your packet.
Thank you, Matt. Mayor, Council, I guess step back just a minute and talk overall, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, but there are some important things I do want to mention. And we have a staff that provides one of the most valuable assets we have, and that is maintenance of our roadway and utility infrastructure, about a $460 million asset. It's a huge amount. It's our largest asset. We do it with our most valuable asset, and that is our staff. And I do appreciate and want to thank you for the additions we've had over the last few years. We'll also talk about what those additions have brought us as far as the engineering staff, the inspections, the right-of-way specialist. We'll be getting you a report here before too long on what that right-of-way specialist has undertaken. Part of the reason for asking for that to be a senior position is just the amount of work that he has undertaken and the volume of permits that we're dealing with right now. The numbers projected are quite a bit below what we expected. The numbers are well above what we projected, and it's keeping him very busy, and it's a very important task. So with that, I'll get into talking about some of the things and what's important for us. Keeping pace with growth, I think, is the most important thing. And although we have a couple requests in this year's budget, specifically for a couple senior positions, no new positions, one of the things we've talked about every year, and one of the things we'll need to work on in the upcoming years is the addition of personnel. As the city grows, I think the initial projection was for us to add two additional operations specialists and a truck. We don't think we need the truck. We think we can continue to do it with 9 trucks and provide the same high quality service for snow removal and operations as we've done in the past. But the operations, the maintenance, all the work we do with stormwater and everything else is adding up, and the additional streets and infrastructure out west is going to require that those people come along. Again, we're not asking for them this year. We would like to ask next year, but we understand some of the challenges, and we'll be looking at it closely, but it is coming, and that time is close. Other than that, the street maintenance and rehab execution, I think you've seen a lot of that work going on. Some of it is not going as fast as we'd like, but the work is still under contract and going to be finished. What we're dealing with COVID and everything else, the contractors are still dealing with material shortage, staffing shortage, and everything else, and it's going to be challenges moving forward. Some of the challenges we'll see here at the next meeting or so as we look at some of the bids we get and what to expect. There are concerns by everyone, and not just here at Clive, but all the businesses, WRA and everyone else, and what those numbers are going to look like going forward. So we're excited to see what they are, but we're also a little concerned. But as we move forward, you know, the projects we've completed, they're listed in there. There's several projects in progress, along with several projects in the design phase. That list is being accomplished with the additional civil engineer, the staff that we have, the inspection, extra inspector are taking care of it, along with all the growth we have on the residential side out west. It's a challenge to keep up, but I think we've got a group that's up to it and enjoying it and doing a great job of taking it on. From stormwater management support, Indian Hills, it's a project that we love. Don't get me wrong. The guys love to have something different. Their normal lives are doing the same thing over and over. This is not only unique, but it's different and exciting. And so we did complete the first half of it. We're ready to take on the second half. But again, we've got about 14 weeks of time invested in it this year out of our normal schedule. And the guys are doing a great job of fitting it in and making sure that we stay on schedule. You know, as far as delivering, we talked about Clark Street, you know, construction wise, we're a little bit behind, but as far as getting the design done and getting the projects on the streets, they're out there. We have the Harbach reconstruction designed in-house and on the streets at the time we had projected. We've also got the water project on Rio Valley in Northwest 104th area, the first phase of it coming up, along with some more street rehab patching projects coming up later this year. So we've got a lot of work going on. And we just appreciate your support. It's been very valuable in what we're doing. The short term, we do have a wood chipper in the budget. It's a new request. We used to have 2 wood chippers. We're down to 1 right now. It's in Parks. We would like to add the additional wood chipper to keep up with some of our work. That's, you know, when we have to trim trees, we now call Parks. It's overwhelming to them along with what they are undertaking from a stormwater management standpoint too. So we can share that and also have an extra wood chipper for those situations where we have storms come through. We talked briefly about the additional senior positions, succession planning. Again, the right-of-way specialist and the mechanics positions are 2 positions that are unique. The right-of-way specialist is being overwhelmed with work and keeping up with the work going on as far as MetroNet and so forth. And then the mechanics position is a very unique position. While we can't do everything in-house, it is important that we have someone in-house to make sure that everything is put together and kept on track. And we are doing a great job of it. But we do want to recognize the importance of that position. And then the other short-term item you'll see in there is additional capacity in the Metro Salt Storage Facility. When West Des Moines pulled out of there, they left half of that facility open. We were able to move from the 1,000 tons of storage up there to 2,000 tons of storage capacity. We only have 1,000 tons up there at this time. The idea would be that, you know, as we grow, we'll use more salt every year. We could use more storage to have it on hand. We won't fill it up this year, but this year we'll put a little bit in, about 1/3 of that, maybe depending on the pricing, you know, from 200 to 300 extra tons in this year. And then we'll slowly fill it up as the budget allows to make sure that we have it in storage up there. For the most part, that's what's in the budget. As far as operations, you look at the capital equipment side. Something that we do on a regular basis is analyze replacement schedules and looking at the equipment. This year we have the dump truck snowplow that we replace every year, except one in the 10-year cycle. Street sweeper is due. The excavator and concrete trailers, the trailers, not the excavator and the concrete machine, but true trailers, concrete saw, joint and crack sealing machine, a service pickup, and then of course our traffic signal replacements and upgrades are in there. We've analyzed, and there's some that we've pushed off, a couple of our pickups due to the pricing increases and everything. We feel we can get another year out of 2 of the pickups, so we've pushed them back a year, along with a motor grader and some other items. And where did they go there? The easement sewer jet was the other one, and the tractor and batwing, a couple others that we put back a little bit. But again, I think we've looked at evaluated it, and we can get more time out of them. We'll do our best to continue to put them back, but not to the point where they become overly high in maintenance. So
Jeff, when was it that, when's the last time we've had 2 chippers, and what's the cost of this chipper approximate?
if I remember that,
15,000.
I
Yep.
remember seeing it. Was it that
Yep.
low?
and it was what,
That's a
two
high-
or 3 years ago?
big Number, but-
It was a little over 3 years ago when we had it. We had one that was just, it ended up being, we kept it too long and we didn't replace it. We tried to see if we could get away with one chipper and on this one, what I'll say is I actually asked Jeff to put this in here in terms of a request. And it's something that we've been talking about between Parks and Public Works. And we did, shift the main one over to Parks and then ask them to try to keep up with the right-of-way tree maintenance that Public Works has historically done. And it's just been too much in terms of what we're asking in Parks. And then as you'll see later in the presentation, we're hitting on some capacity limits in Parks and why there's some needs, particularly on the natural resources side. I'm trying to find a way to also shift some of that responsibility back to Public Works. But also I get more concerned every year as we've had 2 derechos in 2 years. And thankfully this last time we didn't get impacted as much as the one last year or in 2020. And the demand for these pieces of equipment get very specific when those storms go through. And obviously in 2020, we did a community-wide cleanup to address that. We didn't have to do that this last time. And so for me, it's also a protection tool too, to make sure we have control of 2 chippers, because if we had one of those chippers go down in the middle of following a derecho and we didn't have anything, I just wouldn't want to put the city in that position. So this is a little bit of an insurance policy. Also, we do have the service need that it's becoming more frequent where we're having to address these kinds of needs. So this was actually something I asked Jeff to include in his budget, and I think is important for us to consider.
Well, clearly it's insurance right there, but the bulk of the ash trees are down and the ground up. We've had one derecho that was obviously tremendous damage, right? But one could also say that, if you look at the last one, most of the dead branches, the branches came down during that first derecho. So I understand having a backup, right? I get it. Is this a need or is this a want?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I would say, I wouldn't say it's strictly a want because I do see a need there. But can I say, do you have to have 2? No, you don't have to have 2 of these pieces of equipment. So it's a little bit of both from my perspective.
I think Jeff wanted to
Jeff,
say.
what's
Go
your?
ahead,
Well,
Jeff.
just briefly, it's just not storm damage, the tree maintenance takes place. We occasionally have trees growing around stop signs, and although it's the residents' responsibility, sometimes we have to respond right away and get stop sign cleaned up once it's brought to our attention so that we don't have an accident and have liability there. When we're working in our sewer easements and working in outside the right of way, a lot of times there's trees and stuff that grow up around manholes and stuff like that. We would call Parks and say, Parks, we need you to put this on your schedule. It's something we would respond to, totally unrelated to storm damage. So it's not just a backup. It is a need for normal operations. Parks uses theirs quite regularly. If you go
Are these
back.
tow behinds? Like
Yeah,
you
these are
can
just
shoot
tow-
into a truck?
Yep. Yes. And I will say that since we bought the last one, they've increased about $25,000 due to all the regulations. When I called about that pricing, it was up quite a bit from the last year. There was actually 2 books with delivery after July 1st. They gave me the price projected. Again, it may not be that much, but conservatively for budgeting, they did ask me to use that price. So
What was the price, Jeff?
about 115,000 was the budget number that was given.
Jeff, on the salt storage.
Yes.
Here, traditionally, how much have we used? And I understand we've got the ability for increased capacity because West Wayne pulled out. But the question is what do we use? What do you, as far as projected use right there? It's great to have that, but do we need that? So how does that, our past usage based upon future projections with this new capacity that's we're done?
A couple of years ago, we pulled about half of our supply out of the facility up there. As we grow and continue to grow, our annual usage is going to continue to increase as we do it. As you know, we're ones that don't use a lot of chemicals. We depend on being out there. We probably put a little bit more salt down than the other cities, but I think it shows on the quality and condition of our streets after a storm. One of the things, and I'll go back to experience previously, is when you run out of salt, you're usually not the only one running out of salt. Everyone is. Several years ago, salt prices went from $30 a ton to over $100 a ton, and now we're sitting at about $60 a ton, and would expect that, if it becomes in short supply, it's just not one place or everywhere, it's everywhere, and those prices, double, triple. 1 year of storage can usually save you the cost of putting it in there. So it's a good idea to make sure you have plenty of capacity for a full year plus a little bit extra in case needed.
Okay, thank you.
So starting off with the road use fund, how does this translate to the fund impact? So part of what you're going to hear me talk about this year, particularly with the road use fund, and then we'll also talk about this in the general fund, is there is a reason why the city builds up cash reserves in these funds, and it's for times like this. One of the biggest impacts to this fund is what our projection was on our census population. There's only one revenue source for the road use tax fund, and that is road use taxes, and it is distributed to us based on per capita population. We thought we were sitting okay with approximately, looking at, okay, maybe we're going to be about 20,000, maybe 19.5 in population. Well, our census ended up at 18,601. Well, what does that mean? That means about $180,000 hit to our revenue that we were anticipating. And from all the discussions we've had at a staff level, everything looks good in terms of our census numbers. We were just under projecting what the actual population has been. So it has a ripple effect onto the road use tax fund. And so as you can see in the revenues, there's a decent hit there. And so historically, what we've seen is there's going to be a long-term issue in this state related to the road use tax fund, particularly as more electric vehicles come online, is how is the state going to deal with this? Because we have an issue where some of these expenses, as Jeff alluded to earlier, just even on salt, and then we're seeing on equipment expenses, are outpacing the revenues that are coming out of the road use tax fund. We did see a bump of about a dime a number of years ago in that revenue source. It's already starting to outpace that. So this is something where the city can use its cash balance to manage through that issue, hopefully getting to, a special census in 2025. But in the short term, I'm proposing that we're gonna need to make some changes. And one of the biggest changes is the capital transfer. So we started a few years ago to make about a $200,000 transfer out of the road use tax fund to the pavement rehabilitation fund. What I'm saying to you today is we're going to look for other ways to make that transfer, just not out of the road use tax fund. In the short term, we're going to look at some cash that we have from local option sales tax that can be used for road rehabilitation. We're already using it quite a bit for road rehabilitation. We're looking at in the budget year to eliminate that transfer using those funds. And then in the long term, something that we'll be talking more broadly about with the council is additional funding support coming from the sewer utility, particularly related to these street reconstruction projects where we're replacing the sewer underneath the street, is should that sewer utility have a bigger role in the pavement above that sewer that's being replaced? Staff would argue yes. How much is something that we're studying, researching, and that we're going to come back to you hopefully this spring with some ideas on that. Because we heard you loud and clear back in November that you want to see how can we increase that current allocation that we're making for about $3-ish million for street rehabilitation. We see that as a potential funding source, replacing the need for what we get out of the road use tax fund today, because we can't put any additional revenue in the road use tax fund. There's only one revenue source. The only way we can manage it is doing something on the expense side. So right now we continue to also show the street lighting expenses 50-50. It's in the road use and general fund. What I will say is for now, because there may be a point if the road use tax fund cash projections decrease at a faster rate than we're anticipating in the fund summary that you have in your packet, that we're going to have to look at some other expenses, and that's one that we can also move out at some point. I'm hoping not to have to do that, but we're also, going to be monitoring this, and it's going to be one we're going to have to keep watching. But that's
Matt, when you're looking at lost funds transferred in, are you looking at both Polk and Dallas then, or how would you set those ratios on those funds from each one of those counties?
what I would say is that these particular funds, from what I recall, were Polk, but I think we look at both. Both Polk and Dallas support road rehabilitation. expenses. Polk does a little more because most of our road rehabilitation work is in the Polk County side. But again, we're not set by that, by any law or rule. We've just kind of broken it out that way because we have kind of how the 50-50 on the capital side, but it can be distributed between either county. It doesn't matter.
But and arguably, right, Polk, what's the difference between Polk and Dallas on those numbers?
In terms of how much it generates, it's about, Polk County is about 2 million total. Again, 50% of that is paying the debt service off for the public safety building. And it's about 1.2 million on the Dallas side, and that is growing. So there's still, it's about a 2-to-1, but eventually Dallas County will keep growing and the Polk number will probably stay pretty flat just because our population isn't growing on the Polk County side as much as it's growing on the Dallas County side.
I understand what you're saying on the lighting expenses. I've been here since we've changed that. I still think it's important to keep it there. It's a real expense for roads. I mean, that's really where it should be allocated. But I understand the dollars. But I think 100% should go to roads with road lighting. Streetlights. That's what it's for. You know.
No, I understand that. I just wish I had a better fiscal picture to be able to do that.
Yep.
So any other questions on road use? Okay. So looking at the water utility, great, water utilities are great. And one thing I want to mention as we start going through the utility funds, Suzanne from PFM is on the Zoom. So if we've got questions that come up on the cash flow, she's here to help answer those. But as you look at the water utility fund, it's in great shape. And it's in great shape with us seeing a 15% increase in purchased water from Des Moines Waterworks for the next year. We had a drought year, not great to have a drought year, but it's good for a water utility. A lot of irrigation that happened. One thing that I wanted to mention is, so we're projecting a 3% rate increase for the water utility. This is exactly what we were talking about last year, what was projected last year by PFM's cash flows. One thing to mention here is, again, we had the debt we were paying off for our purchase capacity, paid that off a couple of years ago, reallocated those $1 million that were going to that debt service payment for water main replacement. So the Rio Valley neighborhood that Jeff just talked about, that's a great example of us reinvesting those dollars back into our infrastructure, into our assets. But what we also have here is the regional water discussion that's moving along. So last night, the Urbandale Waterworks Board approved unanimously a founding resolution. It's not a binding resolution to be a part of the regional water governing board. Des Moines Waterworks last month approved a similar resolution, and the West Des Moines Waterworks will be taking that up about 2 weeks from tonight. What I would argue to you in terms of at least the current framework, and this is something that we'll probably be talking about at the February meeting, is that Clive is well positioned to also be a part of that regional water utility. One of the key things that we've talked about from from Clive's perspective is, are we getting a return on investment on that excess purchase capacity that the city made a decision on back in 2008? Out of the current framework, the way it's laid out today, again, a lot of details need to be figured out, but the way that framework is laid out, when there is a transfer of assets that occurs, obviously Des Moines Waterworks is going to have a major cash infusion from the other members because of all the assets that they have. But Clive is the only other one that would also see a positive dollar amount coming our way because of our excess purchase capacity. So what I would say to you today is, again, we still need to run the long-term rate projections, but at a high level, I can tell you it's going to be very advantageous for us to be a part of that regional water model, especially when everybody around us is a part of it as well. I think a key trigger for us is West Des Moines, which we'll know in a couple of weeks, to our south, and Urbandale, we have a lot of connections with. So, and I'm also hearing that Waukee is going to have it on their agenda in early February, and Ankeny, I don't know yet. But those are two other key ones, big users. Cities like Johnston, Norwalk, Altoona have a little different scenario in those discussions, particularly Altoona as a producer themselves. So, whether they would be a part of it might not be likely. But I think there's a critical mass that is forming that is needed to start this regional body up. And we've been talking about this for 2 years. I actually think we're on a path to see it happen. So I didn't know if I felt that way a year ago. This is where some of the discussions were at. So with that, one thing that I would have out there for consideration is if there is a cash payment of some sort to the city, there is going to be a regional board decision. They're going to defer it to the regional board of what are some maybe surcharge rates for higher peaking communities. We're a high peaking community. We have a lot of irrigation. We peaked pretty good. We almost were over at 4 million gallons. Our highest production day, about 4.1 million gallons or usage last summer with the drought. But we recognize that. So to me, this could be an investment or other investments in the future of how can we, once we know what that target is, how can we use these dollars to focus on water conservation or other strategies to manage against that surcharge rate and put our residents and our ratepayers in the best position to not have to be penalized, or as the city being penalized with that. Now that could be through tiered rate irrigation rates to make sure folks that are maybe overwatering, pay the penalty for overwatering. And obviously there's a huge educational and informational component that goes with that. But these are things for down the road, that if we were to see that payment as a part of this regional strategy, it wouldn't come all at once. It'd be over probably a series of years. Just again, things that I want to kind of put out there, put on your radar. But overall, we're pretty happy with where the water utility is at this point. And we'll have a lot more conversations to be had here probably in the next month, bringing some folks in to talk about this regional water strategy. But we're sitting in a good position on this fund.
But Matt, we talk about years down the road for the irrigation
Yeah.
discussion and that.
You've been hearing that
I've
from
been
me for a
hearing that
while.
For 10 years, I've been on the council.
3 years I've been talking about it.
Yeah, well, but it was being talked before that. If we want to make a movement on water, and not just irrigation or water or as a utility, as an environmental issue,
We can move now
this
if
is
we
a
wanted.
city, it's a message to try to level that out, to say, if it is a drought year and we're watering like that, that's crazy, right? There should be a stick to it to say,
I
you
would
can
agree.
water, but you got to pay more. And so is it worth more to water in droughts? Or do you want to tighten up a little? I think that has to happen now. That is one thing we can send a message environmentally that we can send today, this year, next year. That is very easy. I get the education thing. I don't know. It's one of those things, you pass it, you send something out in your bills and all that, and in a year or two, it's over, right? The discussion. But we got to tackle it now. We can't wait till this whole thing unfolds and the water, the regional water thing comes on. We figure out where we are at the seat. We're 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and we've just wasted millions and millions of gallons of water that we could have preserved by just tweaking it. I'm not saying tweak it so high that nobody will irrigate. That's unreasonable. But then you have to think before you overwater, right?
I don't think people in my neighborhood necessarily take it seriously, to be honest with you, right now. So
raise it a
point
little,
very well
and they
taken.
won't even notice, probably, not them, but just irrigation, they won't really notice and they'll pay it. But the ones that do, maybe they'll back off a little bit.
Yeah, well, and we've researched this and credit to Suzanne and PFM. We've asked them to put some models together where it looks at, how can we capture about 75 to 80% of our customers on irrigation and find a rate that might not be the drinking water rate, maybe slightly higher than that. And then that top 20%, is we can see what their usage is, and you can kind of generally know on the residential side. I mean, yes, we have some yards that are bigger than others, but for the most part, there's an average right across the city, and you can kind of get a sense when we hit a certain point, they're probably watering more than they need to. And you could definitely have that top 20%, top 15%, have that higher tier, or maybe you even have a 15 and then a 5 for a really high rate. And as a city, we used to have a rate structure like that.
And commercial as well, right?
At one
We're
point
not
in
just
time.
talking Residential.
Right, from a fiscal standpoint, we haven't had a ton of incentive because we've had all this excess purchase capacity in the business of selling water, but that game is gonna change, and you're right, I've been putting it off because for me, it's been, I wanted to know what that target is, but that's just that from a environmental standpoint, of course, that's something that we could consider now immediately and not
The
have. to
tiered water was one of the proposals in the stormwater management proposal that we've been talking about, Pete. So, I would tend to agree. I mean, look, if we want to make real changes in water usage, there's got to be the carrot and stick approach. I would say this, and I think it's important, we're very transparent about it and let people know, look, here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it, right?
Well, and timing wise, because we're going to talk about with this on stormwater, we're looking at a tiered rate structure in stormwater. We're going to do we're proposing to do, if the council's supportive of it, an educational campaign with why we're going to that rate structure. We could do water at the same time.
It's a good story together.
Yeah,
The
I
sewer and the
agree.
water.
It's a water resources story all together.
We bundle them together.
We don't do it for capacity reasons, and I really am not saying to do it we got capacity.
We do.
But we do it because we're gonna do what's right.
Right.
This is the right thing to
The
do.
right thing to do.
So we would love to take a look at
Okay,
that.
Just unmuted.
Oh, Suzanne just noted that, yes, our tiered rate structure ended in 2013-14. It was about 7 years ago when we had that.
Ted, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I mean, I used to work in
Whoa.
water utilities across the country, and most of
You
them
hear that,
have.
Mayor? I do.
What's that?
I just asked the mayor if he heard it because you said you're in total agreement.
Yeah, anyways, what I was saying was that most of the cities I worked with across the country all had tiered rate structures for this. So I agree with Mike. We've been talking about this for a number of years. Let's just do it. And yeah, I mean, the timing seems propitious with if we're switching to it on the stormwater side. So it makes sense.
All right, that's loud and clear. And just so you know, we'll get it with the stormwater, is we're not proposing it for this July. It's the next July rate. So that would be very helpful for us to pair those together.
July 23, right?
Because again, it's a huge water resources conversation, and I know Pete's already generating ideas from.
Jeff wants to make a contribution here, Matt.
Quick, Matt, with the irrigation rates.
Get up to the mic.
I could see it probably be a better June type beginning of the season than a change in the middle of the season, because the irrigation season is usually fairly short there. But we could easily get it ready to go by then if that's.
Yeah,
the way we
so and that's the thing is, that would be another reason you wouldn't want to do it this calendar year and set it for next calendar year to get it ahead of the irrigation season. Because we can set, you have the flexibility to set those rates when you want. And you can do the irrigation rate set up as a one-off, separate from the regular water rate too. Because typically how we do our rate recommendations to you, of course, we have this conversation, it gets incorporated in the budget. And as you all remember, that once you approve the budget, then we usually have the ordinances queued up to get approved through April, get applied in May, billed in June, paid in July. So it's kind of got a 2-month lag on it. So those are things that we can definitely strategize on the water irrigation rate side, because we actually have built the model, and Suzanne's probably looking for it right now. So to show you what that tiered rate structure could look like for water. So we will follow up on that.
Matt, may I offer just one point on that? As we go into the public education and engagement campaign creation or on this front, that question about where we want to be on the continuum of inform to engage is going to be an important one for this council to decide where you want to be. I hear very strongly tonight that some of the members are ready to say, we're ready to say this is the way to go. To what extent, though, do you also want to open up the door to feedback from constituents on that as we further refine it? Because there'll be some room for detail work and tweaking and understanding what those tiers look like. My point tonight is just simply that before we go into the full-blown campaign, we'll need to have a thoughtful discussion about where we want to end up on that continuum of informing to opening the door to more engagement and feedback from residents that ends up shaping what the final proposals look like.
All right, thanks, Pete. Looking at the rate, where we rank, we actually moved up 2 spots on the residential side from last year to this year. Ankeny and Norwalk actually dropped below us. So as we talked about, and I know Suzanne mentioned it last year, is, our rate increases both in water and sewer, 3%, 2% is lower than the average of what a lot of other metro communities are doing. So we're seeing ourselves kind of tick up. Still staying in the mid tier, and you can kind of see we're kind of grouped together with Ankeny, Norwalk on the water rates. We're all kind of clustered together there. But this will change too in a regional model as well. Whereas all of these communities will have a buy-in to that regional model that we won't have of a significant dollar amount. How that affects their long-term rates will be up to them. But again, Clive is well positioned, and this would be the future rates. There's a little flip-flop there because we're real close to Ankeny. Now, this doesn't assume any rate increases for the other cities. We all know that they're going to be looking at them. So we're, again, well positioned in that, back to the financial strategies that we've talked about, kind of staying in that mid-tier while also making large reinvestments in our infrastructure, that $1+ million in water main replacement.
Your Altoona probably jumping to the front, I suppose, right? Because they have their own water.
Right, and they won't necessarily probably join, I don't want to speak for them, but probably join the regional setup because they're their own producer, and they basically just peak off of the Des Moines system. So that'll be, they might just say, we're just fine, just paying.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, I'm sure Mayor O'Connor will rub that into you at some point.
Yeah.
On the sewer side,
Just to pause for a moment before we go to sewer and
Sure.
stormwater, are we doing okay? And how much time do you think you'll need to wrap up?
I'm doing okay. It's up to all you all.
We good? Push through, or do we need a break?
I'm okay.
Push through.
All right, we're pushing through. Sewer utility, pretty straightforward here. Very stable revenues. We do have increases from WRA, but they're not as significant as they've been in the past because our percentage of the whole, with these new members coming on of the flow, our flows, there's everybody's flow is still going up, but our percentage of the whole of the flows is decreasing when you have Grimes coming on as well, and we'll see some benefits to that. And the cash flows really do a good job outlining that. We have some pretty good cash reserves in the sewer utility, and that is why I'm proposing to you that there is an opportunity here, because when we do street reconstruction and replace the sewer, we have to tear the whole street out to get to the sewer, that there could be some capital cash allocations from the sewer utility to help with the road side of things. So that's to come, but we actually have dropped the future projections of rate increases for this. We were showing, PFM was showing 3%. In the out years, we now dropped that to 2%. We're doing really well in the sewer utility. And in terms of where we sit, again, same story, middle tier. Really not much movement in our ranking in the last year, but we're inching closer. Again, I think that Grimes number is going to jump up over us at some point, because they're going to be starting to pay a surcharge to be a part of the WRA. Again, well positioned here. One thing to always note, your Urbandale number always is going to look really low because they also levy a property tax levy to support their sanitary sewer. And then future rates pretty much stay right where we're at. Again, this is with no other rate increases for the other cities. So we could see some movement here, particularly with Grimes in the near
Grimes
future.
is paying in already, aren't they?
They've started to.
Yeah.
They have, but it'll really ramp up once they connect that sewer.
Okay.
But they have the surcharge they'll pay for a number of years that all the existing members benefit from, and our cash flow actually shows a projection on that.
Sure.
Stormwater. So this is one that's been discussed for about 6 to 9 months. So what we tried to do in the packet is show you status quo and an alternative with the tiered rate structure. The alternative also shows some staffing, heard loud and clear from the council at the December meeting. You wanted to dial back that staffing piece, and we've shown that in here. We're showing the addition of 1 new position, Parks Operations Specialist, again, going to be starting to build that natural resources team in Parks, but not adding that position until January 1, so a mid-year position, so about a year from now. Trying to take that into account, knowing that we've got some financial things that we're adding. Showing the grants and incentive program ramping up based on the consensus of the council where you wanted to see that, and additional repair and maintenance expenses. So what you see, status quo showing both cash flows are showing the 10% increase that we were projecting last year for this utility. Again, the $550,000 in capital that's included in both. But then you have the tiered rate structure that gets applied, and it's a little easier. I'll just show it on the next screen here. I know it's a little busy on here, but you've got the small residential and the large residential. I mean, just like we were having the conversation about the irrigation rates, applying that same philosophy here. The small residential would see a significant drop in their rate. At mid-residential, which makes up the majority, it's probably about 80%.
4,000 compared to 1,400 combined for the others.
Yeah, 4,000, yeah, that's right. I've got the numbers here. Yep. So again, they're kind of staying where the regular rate is today. And then you've got those larger residential properties that are significant in size at a higher rate. Now,
Can you just give me a quick idea of what that means? The lower residential, middle, just example, where am I?
so I would say your lower ones would be kind of when we have the smaller lots on like the east side of the community,
Yeah.
where you've got the really kind of smaller lots, I would say. I mean, your neighborhood and then to the east and even to the west of there, not all of them. I mean, you're only talking 450 homes. And then when you're talking the large lots, you're going to go a little for, actually, it'll be on kind of both ends because you have
Yeah.
some east lots that are pretty, but remember, it's measured on the impervious surface. Just because the lot is big,
Yeah.
if it's mostly green,
Right.
we actually measure the impervious surface. So it's really, if it's a big house and has a big driveway.
Yeah.
Then it could tick up into that large. Do you remember, Pete, what the square footages are?
I'll look those up, and if I can't find them tonight, I'll have them for everybody tomorrow.
But rightfully so, like my driveway, Doug, or if I have that and just put it back into a garage, I mean, it lowers it, right? I mean, that U-circle driveway or whatever that horseshoe. So it's all by pavement.
If you turned it to grass, if you turned half your
Yeah,
driveway to grass, but it's probably not enough of a change where it's gonna move the
That's what
needle
you're
for
looking
you.
at. You're coming-
But if somebody has big driveway, big house, big pool,
Yeah.
and
That back-
patio on the backside that's impervious, then they're gonna probably jump up to the.
Yeah.
And then it gets back to the philosophy in irrigation, right? There's more water running off that property into the storm sewer, eventually going to the creek, and we're maintaining that system all throughout.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about that street sweeper. What's the cost on that?
It's about $330,000, $350. It's significant.
And did
I think we've got a $300,000 number in the budget, and that is one thing that's important with this stormwater utility with those big ones is because of the size of the utility, it's not nearly the same size as the water and sewer. We actually spread that payment from the utility over 3 years for those big pieces of equipment, just to help the utility handle those bigger costs.
Did I see in the bill list some costs for street sweeping? What was that if we currently?
It's probably disposal of material from the street sweeper. Say that again? Yeah, the hauling to the landfill of what we pick up off the streets. We've got certain DNR requirements that we have to do with those pieces of
Do
equipment.
we have to contract that out? Is that where that cost comes into place?
Well, that cost is disposal, just us.
Landfill.
Landfill.
That's Metro Waste Authority. They're wetting their beak in it, right?
We're taking care of your garbage, environmentally safe.
We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So with one thing we recognize, and I know we've talked about it quite a bit in the stormwater discussions, Clive is unique and distinct in the sense of we've got a lot of water resources assets to maintain. And this council for a number of years has had a lot of conversation about upgrading our investment in that. It fortunately translates into rates too. For the suburban communities, we're on the high end. Des Moines is about $15 on their ERU. They're the highest by far in the metro area. And then with the 10% rate increase, it takes us to 1042. So about a 91 cent per month increase for a residential property.
The priority we're going to pay for.
It's a priority, we're going to pay for it. And again, just to reaffirm, either status quo, alternative cash flow, both of them are saying we're keeping it for just one more year. And the alternative rate structure then looks at applying the tiered rates starting July 1, 2023. And then based on our previous conversation, pairing it with the water irrigation rates, we would try to tie those together. Again, if the council's supportive, which I'll get to at the end here.
Any idea where Windsor Heights falls on this scale?
I have it. They're kind of in the same range as some of these other cities are, in that $6 to $5 range. I
That's
have it. I
surprising.
just I didn't include it on this slide though. I have it. I can get that for you.
It just surprises me because it seems like they have a lot of issues too, don't they? I mean,
They
they're
have
downstream.
They have
General, you
issues.
mean, right? Or
What I would say to you, Ted, is they have issues. I think their big costs are coming.
Yeah,
Because they haven't necessarily done the level of capital investment that we've already started.
Then they're in the middle of their water resources flood mitigation study right now, and this is one of those types of studies that ends up projecting quite a bit of pressure on the stormwater utility in the future, potentially. See where their council wants to go.
Some of that being the highest is, I'd like to see the numbers not anytime soon. That's not quick on the list, but miles of greenbelt that we have versus some of these other cities don't really have that asset to be protecting and to be, continuously working on. And so it's a great justification if you want all that.
That's why we're distinct, right?
We have to pay for it.
And to that point, Councilman, we discussed even kind of spitballing, what would the name of this utility be in the future? We've settled, just keep it simple. Let's keep it stormwater so people know, but we talked about, could it be a green belt utility or do we call it a water resources utility? Exactly to your point.
One thing too, I'll mention
Look at rebranding that, Pete.
that we'll do at the second budget workshop, and I know Councilmember Weaver has brought this up in years past, is I'll show you the whole package. And not just the whole, you see the annual cost and change to the taxpayer for just Clive, but I'm also going to show it to you for all the cities and see where we rank. What you're going to find is where you would expect us to be, because when you take us as a whole, we're in that top tier of lower cost to our taxpayers, but still delivering outstanding service. So, but that's another table for the next presentation that I'll have for you.
I love those tables.
I can use that for my work as well, Matt.
Yeah.
Yep, I will have it for you. I heard you loud and clear last year.
Matt, may I make just one more clarifying question? So the last time we talked about this, one of the other things that we discussed was the rate at which we would be ramping up the incentive program. What's in this program right now, as Matt's presented, is what we presented last time we discussed it as well, starting at $10,000 with those awards starting in the fall, this coming fall, the beginning of the next fiscal year. Then ramping up 20, 30, 40, 50 in the subsequent years, $10,000 increase each time. There are some additional grant programs we're going after that could dramatically increase the number of installations of SQR we get done, plus what we're doing with the Harbach project, which is very targeted on some tree and SQR opportunities with that neighborhood. So practices are going to be going in the ground, but as far as the dollars supporting the grant program that would lead to more of those practices, it is starting with that ramped up approach. Does that still feel like a comfortable pace? We can always revisit if we have a lot of people subscribing to it, but it's starting at 10 to feel like a comfortable pace still.
I was okay with that. Let's not, I think we start small and build incrementally. And is that the right number? I don't know, but you got to start somewhere. I mean.
And you do have flexibility in the utility that if you see you need to ramp it up more, we have this conversation every year, you can change that.
It's amazing though, when we think 10,000 is a little amount, and I guess relatively it is, but Metro Waste Authority has a $50,000 grant, a program every year, and we're calling people at the end to try to get people to use it. And so now that doesn't mean all of you start writing grants, but it's harder than you think to give away 10 grand on these projects we're talking about. So I think it's a great start.
Big part, letting people know what's out
Yeah.
there. And also if we want to pursue, green gardens and water barrels and other aspects, we talked about trees, all that's in the mix.
But it gets us out of the starting block.
Right.
It does.
Thank you for that direction. I appreciate it.
So just real briefly on the general fund, we kind of talked about this with road use. Again, the sharing that we have, again, the utilities support and road use support a portion, most of engineering, public works administration, traffic safety. These utilities also support kind of the general city services, city manager's office, HR, IT. There's transfers that happen with that. Again, we'll be talking about the general fund a lot at the next meeting. And that is part of the reason that you're seeing be proposed that a new position 100% out of the stormwater utility versus a share with the general fund. we've got other conversations to have about the general fund. I just didn't feel comfortable doing that at this time. Scaled it back to one position. That was part of the reason why. So summarizing our conversation tonight, you kind of see on the screen here some changes in road use in terms of the transfer, the rate increases. Again, staff, we're proposing to you, as we've been talking about with the Water Resources Master Plan, that tiered rate structure with the grant incentive program, the staffing position, as we talked about, starting mid-year, January 1, the senior ops specialist upgrade. So those
Jeff,
are.
let me ask you real quick with those senior specialists, and we've done that once. What was the reaction Public Works with the senior positions right there? What's your feedback on it, Jeff? Obviously, you like it because you request a couple more positions, but.
Well, the senior positions are a way to recognize our staff. We're very unique in that we have all operations specialists. There's no promotional opportunities other than the supervisor's positions, which is unique to Clive. Most cities might have a big entrance laborer. They might have a truck driver and operator opportunities to advance. We don't provide that. So it was very important.
We do now.
Well, we didn't have that, yes.
We didn't
you
have
know.
that.
And so when we created the positions, it was an opportunity for us to take a look at the people who'd been here, people that could provide a little bit more and give them an opportunity for that interim type movement. So we had several people apply for it. There's some people that are still interested in those type of positions, and we've laid out what it takes to get there. Along with that, we put some requirements on. We ask them, are we going to just say you're senior, but you also have to get us some certifications to help us and so forth. So it's been very well received and very much appreciated.
So good, positive
Yes.
feedback from the workforce. then.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
I did have a question on that, if I can, maybe real quick. And did some of that have to do with, which I'm fine with, but did some of that have to do with the range of pay, right? That we can bump up against that range, and one way to get out of that range is a senior, to reward some of these folks that really need to get beyond that to stay for retention purposes.
Oh, most definitely. And that's what I'm talking about. I mean, if you look at other cities, they had those opportunities to advance. We didn't really have it unless you're waiting on one of the few senior supervisor positions that we have, and those don't turn over very often. So it was that opportunity to give them a chance to advance and retain them and give them some security of keeping our staff, you know, and again, we do a lot of other things as a city to make sure our staff's there, but that's an important part of it too.
And I do have a
It's increased
specific.
compensation along with that senior, I mean, obviously, right, along with that senior position then.
Yeah.
Right, and I have some specific concerns just on that point on the mechanic position, because right now, there's places getting very aggressive on mechanic pay rates. And so, and that is one of those more senior people who have been here, kind of getting to the top of the range. So exact example of that.
Hey, Matt, can I jump in on this?
Go ahead, Ted.
So I guess that surprises me, what Jeff's comment there, that we didn't have those opportunities. And maybe this is more of a personnel committee type of discussion where, you know, do we need to look at the org chart? It doesn't take much to create positions on an org chart to give people opportunities for advancement and, you know, for professional development purposes, you know, because you don't have to automatically promote people. So the idea that we didn't have those opportunities before this kind of surprises me. And I'm wondering if we have that in other areas of the organization that maybe we should be looking at. Again, it's just at an organization org chart level, right? So I don't know, I guess I just throw that out there.
Well, and I would agree with you, Ted. And what I would say is it is at an org chart level, but it also, you know, has some expense to it in terms of both incentivizing it, but then also having some training requirements that are there to couple with it. But I would say
you got to think through it. It's not just
right. There is some cost to it, and it's minimal, but there is some cost to it. What I would say to you, for example, we've been talking about the same thing in parks. And when we had that about kind of senior positions, whether, you know, we have some specific people that we want to continue to encourage the training and maybe higher level certification in horticulture, in animal husbandry with the goats and things like that. So we talked about that with parks, but what their number one priority was get us help. And that was another position. And so we have examples of that where I think in the future, I'd love to do that in other parts of the organization. But they indicated to us is, you know, we need help. And so if we're going to be able to talk to the council about something, we want to talk about that first. And because we also have been talking about it at the parks level, and there might be some other parts of the organization, again, at a personnel level, a personnel committee level that we can talk about. And I think part of the work that we want to do in our employee recruitment and retention program, I think we're going to also identify some other areas that we might want to think about in the future.
The priority is adding a full-time position over senior level type stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And some of that problem though is, Matt, and I get it with my day job, but at some point you do got to look around and say, I can make you all seniors.
Right.
Now you're all seniors. Where are you gonna go from there? Because you are still a flat
organization.
I'm a very flat agency, right?
Yep.
Unless there's gonna be a coup, Leslie won't be executive director. I mean, there's no advancement and below that, there we have 4 directors, right?
Right.
So you gotta tell them, I can only.
We're a small city.
I can only chase so many of your dreams. Some of them, their buttons is a title. Some of them, their buttons are money. Some of their buttons are time off.
Opportunities, training.
Or training, right? But you can't.
To work
give
outside of their
everybody-
job description
You can't give them
sometimes.
all a title. So there's a balance.
Right, and that's what we're trying to strike. And I think we've identified definitely a need on the public works side. And also you got a size of a crew there where you want to have those incentivization to get that additional certification. And also there's just an operational piece to that, particularly for public works, where we want to have a pretty deep bench of people who have water and sewer certifications, because those are very technical things. And there's actually certain requirements that, and I know we talked about this last year, but I think that also goes for parks and maybe some other areas where we want to do that to make sure we're also covering our operational basis. Again, I think one of the benefits we have in our public works department that other departments don't have is this flexibility of the cross training between crews. So when we have a water main break, we've got multiple crews that can address it. Not every city is set up that way. And that's one thing I'm pretty prideful about.
You know,
our
what I
group.
also like is institutional knowledge we're gaining from projects like Indian Hills and some of the other stormwater management programs right there where, we're doing some things internally
right
that are farmed out by most other communities.
Right.
And I don't want to lose that knowledge that these guys are gaining every year and gals as we're gaining every year building these projects. That's a big part of our stormwater management plan.
Just a great skill set that we're tapping into. And I can tell you, they did a great job with that first phase of Indian Hills, and really excited to see how the second phase is going to be a little harder. It's a little tighter for the second phase, but straight to your point, Councilmember Klein, is we're building those skill sets in-house.
Just quickly, if I could, one of the other things and aspects in response or in relation to that question was, as part of the senior positions last year, we also had some incentive pay for certifications. So even if you're not a senior position, there's some certifications you can get that if you want to advance yourself, you can get that too. And that was all in last year's package. So we did build a little bit of that in.
Thanks, Jeff. So again, any I'm hearing some consensus, but I want to reaffirm that before we leave this in terms of the direction that this budget is headed. Are you comfortable with where we're at? And then any questions on next steps?
One comment, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Susan.
I've been kind of thinking about how I'm bothered by the relatively limited approach to the grant process for community residents. I do hear what everybody's saying about wanting to actually utilize the money that we put forward. So I'm okay with starting at that level, but I hope we will make it clear that really for us to make progress in the community, it's going to take working with citizens. It's not just that the city can keep going and trying to do stream bank restoration or something. We really need to get practices on the ground with residences and commercial entities. So I hope we make it clear that our intent is to continue to ramp up appropriately, paying attention to where we get the biggest bang for the buck in terms of investment. And I think there's a message that can be conveyed as we're increasing those stormwater fees pretty significantly, that we really want to reinvest that with community members. So for those who are frustrated about it, we can all be in it together if that makes sense. So I don't want to miss out on that opportunity by it looking like such a little postage stamp effort to do grants that it looks like we wanted to say we did it, but we didn't really do anything with it. So that said, I'm okay with where we're starting, but not for longer than 1 year.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Councilwoman. In February, we were invited to submit a final application for the IDOL's Urban Water Conservation Grant. You'll recall we based that on what Polk City did last year successfully to do a number of SQRs in their town. We're bumping up what they did at $70,000 and putting it up to $100,000 for what we are applying for. If that's the case, a chunk of that money will go to doing the projects with the Harbach pilot, but the bulk of the dollars will go into doing those SQR deployments throughout the rest of the city as people say they want to do them. And so I think we're challenged as staff to go and find the dollars where we can get them. Let's not just put this on the ratepayers. If we do that, that would mean a year one investment that far outpaces anything that we're scheduled right now to be able to fund out of the utility, which right now is at a ceiling of $50,000 grant program. So we hear you. We hear very clearly that the measuring stick for Clive is how many of these practices do we actually get deployed? And we'll do our darndest to make sure that we get the resources behind, whether it's through the grants or other opportunities, to get these practices deployed, because that's what's going to make the difference of how we handle water in this town.
Susan, that's a really good point. And, we can do a lot from a city perspective, but, we can only do so much. And I agree it's a starting point, and I want to see that bumped up too. I think the overall, really the key goal is to enhance that public-private ownership. We're all in this, the city can't do everything for you to deal with the stormwater management. And we're going to give you carrot, a lot of incentives, but we have to have that kind of a plan, Pete, that we're putting out there, that people understand the problem and understand how they can be part of the solution. It's just not all in the city to solve everything. But Mr. Citizen, we'll do X, Y, and Z for you to help you. But at the end of the day, it's got to be that public-private partnership. I think to truly get where we need to go, it's a long-term problem.
Suzanne?
Oh, I think Suzanne helped us out with the Windsor Heights rate, $550 per month. Thank you, Suzanne, for that. I see that in the chat. And I think to Councilmember Judkins' point, hopefully a year from now, we've used all those funds and we are having that conversation as we got to go higher. That would be a great problem to have, I think. And that means we're seeing that acceptance. And so our hope would be, that we're having that tough conversation a year from now, not tough, but in the sense of exciting, a good problem to have. Let's hope we get there for sure. Not just on the grant dollars, but even on our own and look at that. Suzanne, I know I kind of ran through some of those things. Anything else that you'd like to add that I may have missed on the utility rate side?
No, I just think overall, the city of Clive has extremely healthy enterprise funds. You're in a very strong cash position and well-positioned for your next budget year.
Special thanks to PFM and Suzanne for doing that comparison analysis on the stormwater utility. They dealt with a whole lot of materials we sent them from HDR and a whole complete different sort of financial model, and made sure that we were doing apples to apples comparison to what we are today to what we might be in the future.
Right. And we'll get with Suzanne and her team and dust off that water irrigation rate model that we created a few years ago. So we'll get back to you on that.
Already pulled it in the file.
All right. That, Your Honor, that's all I have is we're going to proceed with the direction that's laid out on the last slide there, unless there's any other questions.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Pete, will move down to your end.
Thank you, Your Honor. So let me start by apologizing for the technical difficulties that we had earlier tonight. Thank you for your patience as I was working the keyboard here as fast as I could to get it done. Next, we've had some ongoing Harbach engagement. Some of you received some emails from residents. We have shared this morning a number of other updates for folks. The big opportunity for residents to continue to participate in this process is reaching out directly to all of you or coming to these meetings tonight. The advantage for residents is that way they can either speak directly to you or get you all in the group. So at this point, we're not planning on another neighborhood meeting, but we will keep listening. And if we hear big sentiment that they want one, there might be still an opportunity to do it. But the 27th of January is a key moment because that's when we have the public hearing to receive bids and make an award on that contract. And as I laid out in some of those communications, and we'll share in our Friday email, the direction we're moving forward with still is 8 foot on the north side of the street, narrowing the street from 31 down to 26, which were a couple of the bigger issues that the neighborhood raised last time that we met with them. So please know that you might be getting some communications. Clark Street. We walked Clark Street yesterday with a number of people on staff so that we can begin to now tailor specifically those bioretention cells to make sure that they are going to be manageable for the homeowners that have one in their front yard. And we'll continue to work very closely with all of them so they understand what's coming. Now the street lights are in. I don't believe they've been energized yet, but they are all standing, not lying down on the street now. And they were able to bore, so we're not going to have to daisy chain to get them energized, is my understanding as well, which is key. Now we're ready to get the Clark's neighborhood together again. Expect that neighborhood meeting will be in January timeframe or very early February. I'd like to see the street lights on first before we bring everybody together.
For sure.
Are up though.
They are up.
Lights are up.
Yep.
Yeah, we look at more.
Metronet, Councilman Weaver had asked about how we're doing with engagement around Metronet. So the game plan there is I'll be meeting with their representatives to understand where they are in getting through the entire city and then what their plan is to complete the work and where they anticipate being. I anticipate we'll have a great content for a newsletter article where we could even show a map of where they've been and where they still will need to go. The update I got today at the chamber luncheon, Metronet joined the chamber. Great, love to have them in the Clive chamber. They said they are going to definitely have work to get through the rest of summer 2022, but they said summer, not fall. So that would be good to see that completed and not linger on into the second or to deep into 2022. So fingers crossed that we'll get a good update, but more to come.
Before you leave Metronet, I think they've blanketed the city with cards as far as, signing on, but there's a gap though, right? They can't provide service immediately, or
that is what I would anticipate. They have not put fiber out to actually provide services in a number of neighborhoods still. So
They are doing that. I think, Chief, in your neighborhood, though, they're providing service now.
Yes.
In certain neighborhoods, they are.
They're providing service in Country Club West
Yeah,
as well.
they are in certain neighborhoods, but like, for example, they just installed in front of my house this week, actually, and I had indicated an interest, and I imagine it'll be a little bit of time, because right now, what I've seen is they're just putting the conduit in, they haven't ran the fiber in it, so I think it's probably a month at least delay before they start to actually fire up service.
You'll get the knock on the door. They're aggressive on their marketing, so.
Well, I was gonna kind of jump in on that. That's kind of where I was gonna go, Pete. Beyond just when they're gonna lay the wire, the questions I get from residents, I just got another one today, is when is the service gonna be offered? I mean, they've been in my neighborhood, but at what point are we gonna have the option for consumers? So that's really, I think, what we need to get from Metronet, in addition to all their construction work. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
We'll follow up.
We'll follow up.
Thank you.
especially on the east side of town.
In the hood.
I think all sides of town are important.
I was gonna say, I kind of been curious about the west side of town as well.
And even if they can't give us, they need to be able to create a place where we can send people to answer that question,
Right.
because our team is not going to ever have the most recent data. We need to be able to get potential customers for them to somebody who would be able to answer questions.
Page or something.
Yep. Some good news on the communications and media front. We had a nice set of articles and television stories on our infrastructure event that we hosted with Congresswoman Axney. Happy to bring a number of other cities to the table to talk a little bit about what they hope to get out of the infrastructure bill. We were well prepared to talk about what we will be able to get out of it. We really lifted up our BRIC application that we're working toward submitting at the end of this year as well. You'll remember that is a big chunk of us getting to write with the southeast corner neighborhood in Clive, the most flood prone properties in the entire city, and imagining the next chapter in that neighborhood. The mayor today was interviewed by the Register, talking about this council now as it is coming together and writing its next chapter as a team, leading and setting the policy direction for the city. So we look forward to seeing a nice story come out of that. And finally, on the horizon, probably what will end up being one of the biggest stories of all of 2022, we'll have the new baby kids start to show up here January, February, and March. And I've heard rumors, but probably more than rumors, that we have some of our team in the library creating some knit sweaters for some of those new kids as they arrive. A baby goat knit sweater will break the internet. Go Clive.
Hopefully March. We don't want it to be too cold.
That's right.
Lisa had
need
them on
lots
them
of
last time
pictures.
quite.
Lots of pictures, lots of cuddling opportunities. It'll be great.
Thanks, Pete. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Doug will have
Ed, what do you have?
conference room.
All right, couple things here. MPO exec met yesterday. So the Department of Transportation has pushed down some new requirements for project scoring that will include how the project affects climate change, as well as equity and justice transportation planning. They provided no details around what any of that meant, or how it will be judged, or what the repercussions are if you don't meet what they want. So, but that may be impacting future project allocation and how the dollars are spent. So we'll be watching that closely. The transload facility is almost done. The project should be complete in March with the certificate of occupancy in May. The delay there is just because SOD can't go in and they can't give out the COO until the SOD goes in, but it will effectively be done in March. So super exciting, and that should be a real boon for our region, and especially with all the supply chain issues that we're seeing. Last thing with MPO is that Todd asked me to serve on the or as the treasurer secretary. So I will now be the treasurer secretary going forward for this year. I did make it clear, though, that I did not necessarily want to, want to be in the line of succession up to the chairperson. So they had a vacancy due to the Matt McCoy situation. And so I've agreed to step into that role for the next year or two. So, and then lastly, on a personal note, my term as president of DMAR is now effectively over. The 2021 official stats are being issued, I think today. And so I will be doing my last round of media as president, and then you can no longer call me Your Excellency. I am done.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Your Excellency.
Eric?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Susan?
Just briefly, Pete mentioned the chamber lunch today. It was just so exciting to hear about really great things happening with businesses in Clive. I guess I especially appreciated the Horizon Events Center update and how much they've evolved during COVID times. And then the conversation about the Lutheran Church that's kind of across from where I live, that's expanding their childcare offerings. And that's really needed. And it was fun to hear about that approach. So also mentioning the chamber, I think it's exciting that Edie Beckerman, who's been the head of the Windsor Heights Chamber, is joining the Clive Chamber to work with Christy. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can cook up together.
Very good. Michael?
Just to mention back to Pete's discussion on Harbach, there is talk, there's letters back and forth to us, emails, but there's a positive. I had asked Pete to go out with me this week, and we went out yesterday, if I remember right. In between a snowball fight, we met with one resident that came out to talk to us, and very positive. And once Pete started explaining even the water piece of it to him and our participation, to me, they left fully engaged and on board with it once they understood it. They had not been into previous meetings. This is, but it was the gentleman that his house unfortunately got hit by that tree down. But he and his wife came out, and his boy, and talked about it very positively. He understands his neighbor's side of it and wants to stay out of that. But we hear the negative, but we don't always hear that engagement and positive. And Pete did really great job with that resident on taking the time and explaining it. But he spent 20 minutes with them, explaining the whole project. So And it fits his current need as well. So I think we need to continue to march down those doors individually, maybe not next week, but soon.
Is it Pete Senior or Pete Junior who did a good job?
Both.
Okay.
Pete Junior was a good thrower
Yep.
of snowballs. I was pretty cat-like though, Mayor, and moving out of the way, but that's it.
Good. Thank you. Leslie?
Nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
Just one thing to show, of course, everybody's hearing about the storm tomorrow on the news. Just to give you some projections of what we anticipate seeing. Again, everybody's all geared up, ready to go, but that is what we're looking at, probably 7 to 10 inches starting tomorrow around noon, lasting till the wee hours of Saturday morning. Again, we've got fully staffed, all crews ready to go. And we'll probably look at a few things, maybe close the library a little early tomorrow afternoon. I heard some schools are starting to cancel, things like that. Again, it's just a normal Iowa winter storm. But the one thing I would say is this versus the previous storm, this one's kind of over a long time period. And so we'll have crews rolling and then give you an idea of time frame when things are going to hit. National Weather Service, so around that 10 to noon. This is just the snow starting. And then this is probably the key one. It's going to really hit us kind of Friday afternoon into the evening hours. So good night to stay home and enjoy the snow globe that'll be outside. Also, Supreme Court did stay the federal OSHA ruling. So we won't be at this time moving forward with any kind of policies related to mandatory testing. That came down this afternoon. And then also wanted to mention, because of the snowstorm, there was a chamber ribbon cutting that was scheduled for tomorrow late afternoon. That's been canceled and will be rescheduled. So just wanted to note that. But that's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
I have one quick question. You mentioned OSHA, but there was also what I think is called CMS, and those
healthcare.
requirements remain in place. Are we covered by that at all?
So we're not, because that's really targeted towards facilities. So the way we've understood the ruling, it doesn't apply to our paramedics, even though we do receive Medicare funding, but it's more related to Medicare facilities. And so we do not see that applying to us at this time unless anything has changed in those rulings, but I haven't seen that at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known specifics. What I read said anything Medicare reimbursed is
Right, which
impacted
we are
by
one
it
of them.
still. So I thought that
Yeah, one of our
before we
biggest,
said absolutely no impact, we should be sure about
yeah,
that.
yeah, that is one that we haven't seen any impacts relate to fire and EMS, but Medicare is our number one funder of our ambulance fees. So.
All right, thank you. Matthew, any correspondence?
All of the correspondence were in your packet.
Any further matters for us to consider this evening? Hearing none, Ted.
Well, just one quick thing. Did I hear McCoy say he moved cat-like?
Yeah.
I had an old fat cat once that.
Much like that one.
I'm just checking. All right.
Much like that one.
On that note, we'll adjourn at 8:54.
Have a good night.
Good night.